This is Chicago. Doors open on the left at Chicago.
Welcome to Chicago. Welcome to Chicago. Welcome to Chicago.
This is Chicago. Doors open on the left at Chicago.
Welcome to Chicago.
Welcome to Chicago. You are tuned in to the TCSF podcast with Big Z in the house. We got JC Dynasty Fantasy Football, and we are coming to you straight from 606 Media Studios, powered by True Chicago Sports Fans. And this is the episode 245. We're fired up and ready to dive in with a bunch of stuff. It's an action-packed episode. We've got two guests swinging by, and we'll get to that in a second. But we are brought to you by 606 Media, your ultimate source for all things Chicago. Don't forget to swing by 606media.com to snag your official TCSF podcast t-shirt, or check out the exclusive For the Love of Sports merchandise line. Show off your Chicago pride. I'm working on a new video. I got a bunch of people who sent me their images or pictures of them wearing the new gear, and I can't wait to make a new promo video with them in it. Thank you so much for the support. I can't thank you enough, really. And everyone else, if you have not checked out the new line, go over to 606media.com, click on the merch button, and that'll take you there too. There's three lines. There's a Nike line, there's a regular athletic line. For True Chicago Sports, you can get hoodies. There's football jerseys, tank tops. There's Razorbacks for the ladies. There's all cool stuff in there. So go ahead and check that out. If you're watching on the Facebook, the YouTube, the X, the Twitch, smash that subscribe that. Smash the subscribe button. I'm like tongue twisted today. And if you're listening on your podcast app, please leave us a 5-star review. It means the world to us. Drop some comments and shoot us up on the charts. Keep us on the top half. We really appreciate that. And if you're looking for more ways to get involved, support the show with a monthly subscription at anchor.fm/True Chicago Sports Fans for as little as 99 cents a month. Every little bit helps to help the conversation going. And while you're here, be sure to subscribe to our show and the rest of the 606 Media family. You got Impossicated with myself, Big Z. We dive deep into fascinating life stories with engaging discussions, insight interviews, and plenty of humor. I think there's about 13, 14 episodes up on there with comedians. There's Miguel, who's going to be on the show later on. They got a full interview on there. I've got models. We've got personal trainers. We've got comedians. Let's see what else we got on there. We got a DJ on there. We've got a club promoter, former club promoter. Definitely a lot of cool people that have come across my life, and their story needs to be told, so it's up there. So please go out and check out Impossicated and subscribe as well. No Water on the Weekend podcast with Steven and Sean, a pop culture podcast serving up funny trivia, film and TV, music, and all of the Chicago-centric happenings. Again, they go live now. You can check it out on 606 Media or on their Twitch channel, which is No Water on the Weekend. So strap in. Let's get ready for an unforgettable ride through the best of Chicago sports culture and beyond. Let's get started without further delay. Episode 245, the Bear Essentials. We are going to focus this week on the Bears draft, which is now complete. We're going to break it down with JC. He's going to go pick by pick and tell us his impression of the gentleman that we've drafted this past weekend. We're going to go talk to WhiteSox after they dropped another series in Sacramento to the Athletics. It was a pretty good series. They got walked off, I believe, twice. We're going to have Jake Ankony from SI to break it all down. That is going to be our first guest around 7:30. And then we're going to talk Cubs, who finally dropped a series to the Philadelphia Phillies at home. That was a tough series for them. Phillies came in here ready to wreck it for the Cubs. But to tell you the truth, it's a fun team to watch when I can watch them, because I don't have that channel. But when I go out and am able to consume the Cubs, they are a very fun team. They score a lot of runs. You never feel like they're out of it. So it is a fun team to watch. And we're going to talk to Miguel Esparza, the voice of the Cubs on 1200 AM. He's going to join us around 8:15. And then I want to check in if JC actually did watch any wrestling at the end. So we'll talk about 5 minutes. Hopefully it's 5 minutes this time. We did 45 minutes on wrestling, which was amazing. And everyone who watched those clips and blew it up, thank you so much. But yeah, we'll talk a little wrestling at the end. But definitely, JC, how's your weekend? How's your week spin?
I have been struggling here. I got a new iPhone, and unfortunately, my old Apple ID was linked to my phone, and it used an old email that no longer exists. So therefore, I can't just change the password because you can't do a password recovery with an email that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So I had a hell of a time, trying to figure out like, oh, I got to download this Google app to download my photos. Then I got to download this Google app to get my contacts. And then I literally had to go through, personally download all my old apps, sign in, change passwords. I spent probably 40 hours last week on this cell phone. Literally got home Friday night from work at 11 p.m., stayed up till 7 in the morning downloading photos, contacts, all that stuff. And then woke up at 11 a.m., got on the phone with Apple and spent 2 hours with them factory resetting my brand new phone so that I could then start with a new Apple ID. And then, like I said, then I had to transfer everything from Google back onto the new phone. So it's been a disaster, but I finally have a working cell phone again. No more blue bubble
Green
group
bubble
chats. So I'm happy with that. Like I said, I still got a little more transferring to do. Notes, like, I keep some passwords and some non important passwords in my cell phone.
Right.
So
right.
Like I said, I still got to do a few things like that where it's like I change my email password so often because I forget it that it's like I save that in my phone. Stupid stuff like that, so but yeah, that was kind of my whole weekend, was literally just trying to recover my phone.
That is insane. And you would think, how long has the iPhone been out? About 20 years at this point?
Yeah.
Easily. Yeah, about 20 years. You would think that there would be a streamlined process for this situation because it happens. People discontinue emails, or if in your case, it was a school email, which you no longer attend that school. So that
Right.
no reason to have that.
Email.
Right. They do delete them after you graduate after a couple of years. Right.
Yeah. So the problem was that at some point, because that email got deleted, the whole Apple ID was deleted as well. So when I called Apple and said, like, this is the ID that is on my old iPhone 12, they're like, well, that's not even in our system. So like it got deleted from their system as well. Like I said, it was a joke. It was a hassle. And I even said to, like, the people that helped were amazing. They were sweet. They were helpful. But it was just like, and I kept saying to the people, like, there has to be a better way on your end to do this than me having to go through staying up 8 hours trying to figure out, like, transferring photos to Google, and then, oh my God, I don't have enough space. Now I got to pay for space. Again, it's just like a whole thing. But like I said, everything is good now, so I'm ecstatic and I can move on with my life.
Life was a lot easier when you had to update your phone by plugging it into your laptop. Let me just tell you right there.
Well, but okay, so right, that's part of what happened is that I got the cell phone. They tried to do the initial transfer because I didn't know the password. They couldn't do the transfer, right? So then I go to the Apple store. Apple store literally tells me, there's nothing we can do for you. Go ahead and do a manual backup. So again, hooking your cell phone up to a cable, up to iTunes, do a backup. Then get your new phone and do a backup. So you know what the problem with that is? When you do a backup like that, it takes your Apple ID with it. So then my Apple ID that did not exist now got transferred to my new phone, which again, now I don't have a password. And then it was like, then they were like, well, we'll do a factory reset. In order to do the factory reset, it asks for my password. Like, so it's like, I'm literally sitting there like, and at one point, like the person I'm on the phone with at Apple is literally sitting there going, you may just have to go back to AT&T, return this phone, and then get a new phone from them. I literally looked at him and I go, if I cannot do a factory reset, I'm not giving someone a phone
that
has all my photos, all my contacts, and everything else. Like, and again, it was just a whole, like I said, we don't want to talk about this. We want to talk sports. But
yeah, we're talking sports. I just wanted to check in because I know you had a rough week, and it's about to get better. It's going to get better.
Literally, I spent between going to the Apple store twice, 2 days in a row at like 10 a.m. And then, like I said, the amount of time I spent on the phone and researching, like, okay, if I do this on iTunes, can I get my photos off? If I do this in, like I said, I spent probably the good of 30 to 40 hours trying to figure out how to get my contacts, photos, and everything I possibly could off of my phone and transferred, so again.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Everybody that's watching, thank you for staying with us during this little life lesson of make sure you keep up to date your email when it comes to your iPhones. I don't know how it is with Androids. I'm not sure.
Yeah, make sure if you have Apple, make sure that you use an email that you plan on never getting rid of for your Apple ID. That's the lesson here, people.
Don't use your sixth grade email or your school email.
Do not let that email go like how do you say, like, dormant. Because Gmail is known for, like, dormant emails, like they'll delete them after like 3 years of non-use. So be careful out there. Be very, very careful out there, people. Because you do not want to go through what I had to go through.
No, that is almost probably the worst case scenario for iPhone users. So I was at the Verizon store hooking up my sister, putting her on the line. She's got a whole set of issues as well with her phone. Every technology messes up around her. So literally when she was trying to pay the tap to pay, it wouldn't work. When she put it in, it wouldn't work. And she's like, I'm going to walk away and let you do it. And sure enough, it worked right away. I'm in the process of switching ISPs. And while we were sitting there, they're like, our computer's not working. This and that. As soon as like we leave and my sister pulls off, I'm about 4 blocks away. And they're like, yeah, your box is ready. It's cool. It transferred over. I'm like, oh, I'll be right there. It's like, it literally, my sister has that kind of that juju going on. So it's been a week as well. But yeah, let's talk sports. Let's start with a little bit of White Sox news. They're bad. They're bad. Are they going to be as bad? Yeah, everybody knew that. Are they going to be as bad as last year, or are they going to be worse? Am I going to have to pay Steven his bet? I think I still have a chance for 60 games. I still have a lot of hope for this team because they have a lot of talent in the minors that should be coming up very soon. They've already brought up Chase Mydroff. Carroll came up this week. The catcher who's been doing fairly well. They're still 7-21 after this past series against the Athletics, who are 14-14. Surprisingly, with no home, they're in a minor league stadium. They're 500. They're better than the Angels. Angels are 12-15. The Astros are 14-13, one game better. The Rangers are 15-13. So they're literally still in the hunt there, which is nuts. I mean, a lot of the teams right now are hovering over the 500 mark. The Tigers are 8 over. The Yankees are 6 over. But even in the East, where everyone's really good, the Red Sox, the Rays, Blue Jays, and Orioles, Everyone is either at 500 or just below it. Surprising, the Orioles at 10-17. But we're gonna talk White Sox baseball. 7-21, 11 games back, 4-8 at home, 3-13 away. Last 10, 3-7. These last couple of games against the Athletics, they got walked off twice, like I said. And I don't mind the team losing when it's close. I mind them when they get blown out on dumb stuff, not catching a fly ball, overthrowing your cutoff guy. It's just the mental mistakes that really frustrate me. And that was that second game where they, that first game, I'm sorry, where they lost 5-6. And the second game, the games that they have won, they have scored multiple runs where they're scoring 8, 9, 10, 11 runs in a game. Those is like the offense just shows up like every 10 to 15 days and they score a lot. And then they go back to losing 3-2, 5-6, 6-3, 3-0, 4-2, 4-2. Again, they get blown out once, 8-4. That's 4 runs is a blowout. Last week the Athletics blew them out 8-0. The Red Sox 10-3. The Athletics again 12-3. Like, these blowouts are really what's killing White Sox fans, because they know that the talent is not at the major league level right now. We do have a couple guys that have been sprinkled in. We got about 3 or 4 guys that are Rule 5 drafts that we have to keep on there, and they've been doing very well for what the talent level is. Now, the people that we do have is like, why is Luis Robert batting 148 with 2 home runs? It's bad. We're talking about Miguel Vargas changing his hands and now swinging a little bit better. If that's all it took, why did we wait so long to change that? Why did we wait? And Andrew Benintendi has been off and on. Andrew Vaughn has been a ghost. We have Brooks Baldwin. You don't see him very much. Bobby Dahlbeck they just picked up. Lenin Sosa has been decent, but he's a 6th man. He's a utility man that's going to come in and out. Nick Matson, same thing. Looking at the rest of the roster, there's really not much to talk about. I know Jacob Amaya has been filling in and out. Who else? Matt Theis. It is what it is. Michael Taylor. I mean, you have a lot of guys that are just fillers until they start pulling up the roster from the AAA team. So definitely it is a difficult time to be a White Sox fan. And I don't know. JC, I know you're working on something as we're recording, but how do you deal with that, especially because you've gone through bad organizations on the north side, but as a fan, how do you feel about that? JC? I don't think he can hear me. We're just going to keep going on. Yeah, it looks like he doesn't got his audio on. So we're going to continue on. So the White Sox, again, are going to start a series versus the Brewers, Los Cerveceros, how we say it in Spanish. The Cerveceros, which is going to be a 3-game series starting tomorrow at 6:40. They have Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then they have the Astros. And then they'll go to KC for 4 games, and then come back for the Marlins. So there is a lot to talk about there with what's going on. Are they going to be able to continue to sustain this losing streaks, this losing ways? We saw that we have a new manager. We got a couple pieces up there, but like, what are we doing? All right, what are we doing? Look, JC is still having internet connections issues. But we're looking at the matchup tomorrow at 6:40. I'm trying to see what the pitching situation is. It doesn't look like I have it on there. But all right, there's JC. There we go.
I don't know. Yeah, I started everything started spinning wheels and freezing up on me. So I don't know what happened there. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I was asking you, how do you deal with that? Because you've dealt with this on the north side where a team is really bad. It's unwatchable. Fans don't really go unless there's a cool giveaway. How did you deal with that on the north side?
I mean, for I grew up as a Cubs fan with the Mark Grace era and all that, where they were always mediocre. they weren't the greatest team ever, but they were competitive. I just tend to. Am I freezing up again?
No, you're good. You're good. I got you. You're good.
Yeah, on my side, the video keeps going to like a spinning wheel.
Gotcha.
That said, to deal, I mean, honestly, stop going to games. Or if the tickets are cheap enough, then you go to games more often. But the end of the day, I mean, the only way that you can go about this is just stop giving the team your money, and hopefully they get the hint of you expect a better product. We talk about this all the time, that with the Bulls and everything else, that until people stop going and stop spending money, that you're going to keep getting a mediocre product. Even though the goal is to get better and win and everything else.
Yeah,
but
and go ahead.
I was gonna say, with the Cubs, we kind of just, as a fandom, we dealt with the punches for 100-something years of we never won. We were never the belle to the ball.
Yeah.
Well, yes, yeah, we finally had some playoff years.
84
for my age.
Yeah.
Well, 84 was before me. I was born in 86.
Yeah, 89. 90.
But it's like I said, you just, on those down years, it's either you kind of pay attention here and there and you don't go to a game, or like I said, depending on the ticket prices, you might go to 4 or 5 more games than you usually do in a season where the ticket prices are up because they're playing well.
Yeah, I completely agree with you with that. Now, here's the thing. The White Sox are really good at marketing. The Bulls are very good at marketing. And that's what they're going to bring in, right? They're going to bring people in with marketing because they know the team on the field is not a good team. It's not a good product, all right? Everything's great. You get there, there's parking, there's a nice party, everyone's tailgating. It's a great atmosphere outside the ballpark. They'll have like bands playing, there's a great giveaway. You come inside, the beer is cold, the food is great. You get to walk around on the concourse, and there's a bunch of stuff going on. You can go to the store and buy new cool gear. Everything's great until first pitch, right? There's not that talent is not on there, and it's like, all right, how long can you sustain that? How long can you have good aesthetics on the outside of the building, and then the inside of the building is falling apart, right? So it's hard to do that year after year, and I think that's how you kill your fandom, is by not putting a winning product on there for them to reward them for coming out to the game, right? I understand the team sucks. You want to bring them in, you pull giveaways, right? That's what the White Sox are doing. They're really good about that. But come on, let's start moving forward. I don't want to be, 7 wins a month is not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it, even for us, understanding that we are rebuilding, understanding that we're going through this transition, understanding that the boys are there. Bring them up. We're excited. We've already went through a rebuild in the last 10 years, and it didn't work out. So, Fred, we'll get to your question in a second. Fred Curtis, we'll get your question in a second. What up, Javi? Great to have you on. Yeah, we'll dabble in a little fire at the end of the show, but I want to bring in our guest, Jack Ankony. I'm hopefully I'm saying that correctly, Jack.
Yes, you are, Ankony.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank goodness. I am notorious for jacking people's names up, but Jack actually works for SI. He's a beat writer for the Chicago White Sox. So why not talk to an expert on a man who watches day in and day out White Sox? Jack, what can we say so far about our Chicago White Sox?
Yeah, well, Jose, first off, I guess thanks for having me on. I've been really excited to join you guys. I guess what we'll say, I was listening to you guys talk a little bit before, and obviously it's not a team that's going to win a lot of games this season. That was never the expectation or anything like that. But I think when you kind of compare this team to last year, I think they are, for what it's worth, playing more competitive baseball. I think they have like 8 or so losses by 1 run and maybe another 4 or 5 by 2 runs. So if you want to look at that as a point of progress, I guess you can. And then I think they're also, they called up Edgar Caro, their catching prospect, recently, and I've been really impressed with him. I think he's given them great at bats. So I'd sort of look at this season from the perspective of, they're probably going to have a lot of guys get called up, some new guys get some chances, and maybe you can figure out a couple guys that could be part of the next good White Sox team. I think Shane Smith, their rookie pitcher, has been great through about 5 starts. If you want to like search for the positives, I would kind of list those, a couple young guys playing well so far.
Yeah, I can agree with you there. Again, I think that there has been some bright spots, but it's like the veterans is what I'm looking at. Luis Robert batting under 180. Andrew Vaughn, where are you, dude? Benintendi. I feel like Benintendi, he can go in his streaky periods where he's super hot, and then you don't notice that he's on the field. You have some other veterans or not veteran. Yeah, I think you can say they're veterans, right? Like Lenine Sosa. We know that he's more of a utility guy, not a guy that should be playing every day. And then there's a bunch of mismatch guys that we got from different organizations, just to plug in the holes until these guys come up. Fred had a question. Fred Curtis, it says, do we think that the White Sox will have a better record than last year's team?
I think so. It's
hard
really hard to lose 121 games. You almost have to. It felt like last year that there were times when, they lost in kind of the craziest way possible. And they've even had some games like that this year too. Like you think of like the game when Tauchman was rounding third to either tie or take the lead and, gets injured. I was in Minneapolis last week and Byron Buxton had the diving catch. So like, I guess they are still kind of losing in ways like that. I just think it's like almost difficult to be so bad to lose that many games again. So I think they'll go. I think they'll win more than 41, but probably not a great margin higher.
No, so me and one of the other guys that's on the show, he's not on today, but we made a bet, and I think the number was 60. I said they can win 60 games and lose 100 and 102. Great improvement, from last year. But I'd said that if the kids come up earlier, I think we have a chance of winning 60. So we're betting for a hat, an MLB hat of the loser of winner's choice. So, what do you think my odds are on that?
Yeah, I think 60 is that would probably seems like a pretty fair line to put around 50-50. I mean, you mentioned like some of the young some of the veterans, like they'll need Luis Robert to really start hitting it. He's probably been one of, if not the most disappointing aspects of the season, I think, to start. Yeah. I thought in the A's series, it was, just really didn't look like he had a good sense for the strike zone in some at bats. I thought some of his swing decisions, whether it was chasing or looking at strikes, was kind of concerning because he's the guy that he was kind of supposed to be the centerpiece of this team. And the White Sox were probably hoping that he would get off to a good enough start that they could trade him because, they've been kind of involved with trade talks like dating back to last year, but ultimately decided to hang on to him. And now they're kind of in a tough spot where it feels like, his value is lower than it once was. So, maybe you might as well hang on to him and hope that he improves and the value goes up so you get something better for him. Definitely been a concerning start for him.
Yeah, it looks like they had initial talks, I believe, with the Dodgers for some prospects on that side, and that's kind of like definitely simmered down because of Robert's performance. And then, it's a risk reward thing when you're a GM, right? You're like, all right, I got a good guy. He's got all the tools. He's just, he's on a bad team. Let's see. We'll give him another year if he can put it together. If he can be that our veteran going forward that can be the centerpiece, and he starts off ice cold. I don't know if you remember, it was Alexi Ramirez. Same thing. April was like, super cold, and then as the weather warmed up, so did his batting average. So I really hope that this is the case. But like you said, there's been a lot of at-bats where he's just staring, he's down 0-2 or he's, it's 3-2, and he just watches that pitch at the outside or it's a slider low and away, and he's just swinging. And he's way off. Yeah, I think right now he's like kind of lost at the plate. Even though you did have a home run in that 10-run game against the
Yeah.
Athletics.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other thing with him is, he's still a pretty young player, only 27. So like, if they are in the position where they're not getting the offers that they want from him, you probably have time to kind of, I guess wait it out, and just kind of see what you want to do. But I expect him to pick it up a little bit. Like I was thinking about, like, you mentioned Vaughn earlier too, and he's been probably one of the bigger disappointments too, batting 157. And like, I was looking a lot of his like expected stats and things like that, in terms of like he's hitting the ball really hard, just kind of getting unlucky. So maybe if you want to take an optimistic point of view, you could look at it from that respect. But I think if you're going to be on the winning side of that 60 game bet, they probably need Robert and Vaughn to pick it up, obviously.
Yeah, hopefully Robert. Vaughn, I'm not too sure of, because there is a prospect in the minor leagues who's raking, and you wrote about him today. Can you talk about that prospect?
Yeah, Tim Elko. Someone responded to one of the posts in my article about him, calling it Elko Mania, and I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, he's got
JC, get on the shirts, man. Elko Mania.
Yeah, there you go. He hit 2 home runs yesterday, so he's got 9 on the season, which leads all minor league hitters at any level. He's obviously in AAA with the Charlotte Knights, and I think he's also first in like slugging percentage. See if I could pull this up real quick. Slugging percentage, OPS, isolated power, weighted runs created plus. He's first among all AAA hitters in those categories, and then obviously leading all minor leaguers at any level in home runs. So he's been great. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he got called up fairly soon. From strictly my opinion, I feel like you might as well, he's clearly dominating AAA, so you might as well bring him up and see what you can get out of him at the big league level. Like, I think there are, I'm not sitting here predicting that he's going to be, a 40 home run hitter at the major league level. Like, I think there are concerns about his strikeout rate is close to 30% in AAA this year, and that's basically what it's been the last couple of years at lower levels of the minors, which is pretty concerning because obviously he's going to face more talented pitchers if and when he gets called up. So, it kind of reminds me of like the Cubs situation last summer with like Matt Mervis a little bit, where, everyone was like, oh, he could be or I guess that was 2 years ago. You can call him up and he could be the first baseman of the future. And then it just didn't really work out for Mervis. I know he's actually doing pretty well with the Marlins now, but I just think this team is in a position where they don't have, expectations to do much in terms of winning this year. So you might as well call the guy up, and, they should have at bats. Even if they still want to give Vaughn time at first base, like, I think there still should be plenty of at bats available at designated hitter. Cause like, I think they just, they did just designate Nick Maton for assignment, and he had been playing most of the time at designated hitter. They're still probably going to give Caro at bats at DH because he can't catch every day, but they'll still want his bat in the lineup. But I think there are still plenty of opportunities where you could, kind of do a rotation between like Vaughn, Elko, Caro at DH, and then when Vaughn needs a day off, or if he continues to just not hit, then you can give, Elko more time at first base. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him up, fairly soon.
Yeah, if people don't know, he's 6'3", 250 pounds. He's a big boy.
Yeah.
He definitely can play the position, and he's raking. And I agree.
Yeah.
He needs to come up, and we need to see what we have at these positions. I really think the White Sox should be moving these players a little bit faster if they can. If there's a slot available, to put them and give them their tryout, because I want this to go a little bit faster than last year. Last rebuild. The last rebuild felt like it took forever, for they were just like staggering these players to come up. and then they all came up, and they were they're never on the field at the same time. Everyone was hurt. Like Yuan was hurt, and then Lou Bob was hurt, and then Eloy was hurt, and then it was just like a carousel of the injury list for the White Sox, and it derailed that entire rebuild. So hopefully we don't have that situation with this. I'll get to Fred's question in a little bit. Can you tell me what's going on with Colson Montgomery? He was one of the hottest prospects last year, and then this year it's not been that case.
Yeah, I mentioned the strikeout rate with Elko, and that's been an even bigger problem with Montgomery. I think it was up in like the 40% or something like that. He did kind of heat up a little bit, more recently, but yeah, that's obviously not getting off to the start the White Sox wanted with him at all. And he was the guy too that I think a lot of people expected to make his debut this season, and that could still happen. It's only April 28th as we're talking now. There's still obviously a ton of the season to go, but yeah, he was sort of the guy that I think a lot of people saw as like one of the building blocks for the future. And I think we'll obviously see Caro and Madroth are already up. I would expect Elko relatively soon. Montgomery at this point with like kind of the slower start, they probably want him to regain his confidence and start hitting on a more consistent basis before they would bring him up and kind of throw him to the fire in the MLB. So he would probably be later on in the summer. Just my pure guess based on how he's performed this season.
Yeah, he was supposed to make the opening day roster, spring training, and he's really just had a drop off. Maybe it is confidence. Maybe he's struggling with his approach. But I do believe he'll be back up. I agree. It'll be like towards the end of the summer. I think about August he'll be called up. You've written a couple articles, and I tried to repost or grab your link and post it on our Facebook page as much as I can when I can. What do you have up next for the White Sox against the Brewers?
Yeah, so I think they're going with they've sort of that series starts tomorrow night, I think 6:40. Yep. So I think they're gonna keep doing this strategy that they've done with the openers is what it's called. It's kind of become a trend in Major League Baseball the last few seasons. So I think they're going with Gilbert again tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. And he was the guy that opened the first two games against the Athletics this over the weekend. So they're sort of just doing that strategy because they've gotten fairly solid starting pitching this season, but the issue with a lot of the guys has been once they get to that fifth or sixth inning and they're catching the top of the order the third time through, that's where they're running into some troubles. Like even Shane Smith, who's been great, like you look at his game log and it's like the fifth or sixth inning is kind of when he runs into a wall a little bit. And so like the idea behind the opener is that you avoid the starter, I guess, or the guy who's pitching the bulk of the innings, you avoid him facing the top of the order a third time until much later into the start, if ever. So they're going to try to do that with Gilbert tomorrow. And then I think it's, we'll see if they do that the rest of the series. It wouldn't surprise me because it did work fairly well. I know like Brandon Eisert gave up a run in his open in the series finale, but then they got 6 good innings out of Davis Martin. So even if it doesn't necessarily work in the first inning, if it benefits the starting pitcher or the guy that's going to pitch the bulk of the game, I think it's something that they could continue to do. The Brewers have been, pretty solid to start the year. They're not going to be, a dominant team this year, I think, with some of the guys they lost, but they're 14-15. So I think it'll be a tough challenge for the Sox because they got the Brewers and the Astros coming up this week. Maybe teams that haven't been quite as good as recent seasons, but still definitely tough opponents.
Yeah, I feel like everyone is like salivating to play the White Sox to get straight, to get right. There's a lot to go on with the White Sox, and we did have a question. I don't want to ignore Fred. Fred's asking, who are your World Series contenders? It is very early for World Series contenders.
Yeah. I think in the preseason I picked. I think my preseason prediction was Dodgers over Rangers.
Ooh.
I kind of went a little bit. I went with the favorite with the Dodgers, and then kind of went with more of an upset pick in the AL. I mean, not that the Rangers were too far down, but I feel like the AL is very open this year. Like, obviously the Yankees are pretty good, and their lineup is going to be tough. But I don't really buy their starting pitching in its current state. The Red Sox made a bunch of moves that they'll I think be contenders, but we saw the White Sox, that's the White Sox lone series win of the season was over the Red Sox. So even they're vulnerable. The Tigers have probably been the biggest surprise team in the AL at 18-10. I think I kind of looked at the AL Central as, 4 teams could win it going into the year, and the Tigers got a 2.5 game lead now. I would still have a tough time picking against the Dodgers. I mean, I know it's kind of been crazy with the NL West, like the Giants and the Padres and the D-backs are all really strong teams too. So I kind of thought going into the year that maybe the Dodgers would be able to threaten like that, the MLB wins record. Maybe that's not going to happen now just because of the division, but I'm probably still not picking against them. I just think if they get to full strength, that rotation is deadly. And then they got 3 or 4 MVP type of guys in their lineup. Haven't mentioned the Mets yet, but yeah, the Mets have, they're leading the MLB in wins right now. And Juan Soto really hasn't even gotten hot for them. So I'd still go with the Dodgers. They just they're scary when they're fully healthy.
They definitely are scary. Now, we have a little bit of time left, but one of the questions I wanted to ask was with the disparity in spending, obviously with the Dodgers and the Mets, and then you look at the Rockies and the White Sox. Is this a problem from MLB?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you have, I don't think it's a problem that, or I guess I'd phrase it this way. I think it's a bigger problem that teams aren't spending than it is that teams are willing to give out ginormous contracts. Like, I think, I see some people when Juan Soto gets 700 million or whatever he got from the Mets, like, oh, it's bad for baseball if you just got these super rich owners that can outspend everyone. Like, I actually think that's good if you have owners that are willing to do whatever it takes in a sport where there's no cap to win. I think it's a bigger problem when teams aren't willing to do that, because you get into these positions like the Rockies and the White Sox and a handful of other team, Pittsburgh, where they're just not really offering much hope for their fan bases or things like that. So that's sort of how I look at that dynamic. I mean, I think things might change after or I guess going into the 2027 season. I think there's supposed to be a new collective bargaining agreement where people have like speculated that some owners might push for the salary floor or salary cap, but I don't think players are going to really be for that because they want to get the $700 million contracts like Juan Soto.
Right.
So, that's definitely something that'll be really interesting to track over the next couple seasons and how that all plays out.
Yeah.
Let me step in for 1 second. How do you feel about all the deferred money?
Yeah. I would say that is, I don't really think teams should be able, I mean, it hasn't become like, I guess to start off, I'm not like a huge fan of that because I think it sort of puts I'm not a huge fan of that being allowed, and I'm not articulating this super well right now.
Fine.
But
You're fine. We do the same thing.
Yeah, we've had this conversation in the past as well. And what I've kind of said is like there needs to be a cap on what you can defer. So whether it be 30 million, whether it be 50 million, like there needs to be like we can't just defer $1 billion in salary, 20 years down the road and just everyone's okay with that. And, have teams like the Dodgers that have superstars at every position. And then, like you said, you have teams like the White Sox that can't compete at all or, can't get players of any caliber because they're not willing to spend. So that's kind of my question is, do you think that there should be a cap on deferred kind of money. Is that something that you can see in the bargaining agreement in the upcoming years that the owners are going to fight for?
Yeah, I think that's probably what might be more likely in my opinion than just a salary cap in general. Like I think it's probably more likely that they put restrictions around how much money you can defer, um, because then you get in a position where you know players will sign these contracts and then what's going to happen in 10 years or however long when the Dodgers want to get the next Shohei Ohtani and pay him, and then you're already on the books for however much money they're deferring, like $50 million or something like that per year. So I think that's going to be something that they're going to have to figure out, because that's the one thing that I have no problem with teams spending a ton of money. I think that's good, like I mentioned earlier. But when you get into the situation where you're kind of just pushing it off, I think that's kind of where it becomes tricky, and where maybe they need to look at making some changes.
Yeah, because as a resident Cubs fan on this podcast, it's one of those. I'm looking at Kyle Tucker,
Yeah.
going, we might have to defer some money ourselves. But the Cubs have been trying to do everything straight up and not defer money and everything like that. But that's kind of like the big argument we had in the preseason was like, okay, how much can you really defer? Like they're at $1 billion salary. Where, like I said, you have some teams that are at 200 million. So you're 5xing, some of these other teams' salaries, if not more. And it's one of those where it's like, all right, like you now have a 40% chance at the World Series or, whatever, because you have this talent. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, even though you pay top talent, doesn't always necessarily mean you're going to win a World Series,
Right.
because I mean, you take a look at the Cubs have beaten the LA Dodgers quite a few times this past month.
Nice dig, JC.
Yeah. Sorry, Jose's second team is the Dodgers, so I got to give it to him. And I do have one more question from a friend who is a Sox fan. Let me just scroll here in my group chat, because he had a question for you, because he really hasn't heard much about the manager of the White Sox. So his question was basically, what do you think of the manager so far and how he's handling the adversity with everything the team's going through right now on this losing streak? Or not necessarily a streak, but
Right. Yeah. The way the season's going. Yeah. I mean, I think Venable's in a really tough spot. As a first year manager, he's, he had a good mentor in Bruce Bochy when he was the, bench coach down there in Texas. So I think that has helped him, but he's in a really tough spot with this roster. So, I think it's hard to really go in on him and criticize much of the way that this season is going, because I think it's more of what we are talking earlier. Like, he just doesn't really have the guys. And, I think, like, talking to a lot of the players, like, I think they all like Venable. Is from, I don't expect any of them to come out in the media and bash him or anything, but like, they've had nothing but great things to say in terms of just, he's relatable because he's a younger guy and he was recently in the MLB. And so I think they like that aspect of it. And he seems like in general a pretty even keeled guy. Like, you don't really see him get too fired up or get too down. And that's something that I think you need in a manager when you're going over the course of 162 games. I think we're going to learn a lot of, I think we've seen him kind of make the, probably his first big like managerial adjustment that you can point to this season is, he's starting to do the opener thing like we talked about earlier, and that's worked fairly well to start. So I think that's something that you can point to. And there's been mistakes and stuff like that. You could argue different pitching decisions or, when's the right time to, when's the right time to pull guys. And, those are always tough calls. I see people like on social media and stuff a lot, complain about the lineup order and things like that. And like I think he's really just trying out a lot of different things, which I can't really blame him for that, because it's not like you have, people say like, oh, the good teams, they run out the same lineup, or they know what they're going to do. Like, he's got a lot of guys that they've had a ton of injuries already. They've had guys not perform well, so they're DFAing them, or they're already calling up a bunch of prospects. So he's already had to deal with so many changes that it's almost impossible to try to stick with the same thing on a daily basis. So I think he's still learning. I think we'll see how things go the rest of the season with him, because he is in a really tough spot. But those would be kind of my broad takeaways from what we've seen with Venable so far.
Yeah, I think every manager is going to make bullpen decisions that don't turn out well, right? Those are usually, it's 50-50. And there's two players that are competing, so you really don't have that much of an influence on what the outcome is going to be. My biggest thing was, I think, running for Matt Tice, who was coming down, pulling the hamstring. You had someone on the bench that was not playing, that was a lot faster, that you could have put in. But again, if Matt Tice is telling the staff and Will saying that he's okay to run.
Or do you mean Talkman? Are you saying?
Yeah, Talkman.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying. Right.
Yeah.
Like that situation is tough, because if Talkman says I'm good to go, you know what? Yeah, I get your point. Yeah.
Yeah. If Talkman just coming back from that same injury is telling the staff he's good to go and he wants to run. But there was a play earlier in about maybe two innings earlier on a fly ball where he was a lot slower running from second to third, and that should have been an alarming thing. Like, you know what? Let's just be precautionary and just pull you now. Yeah. And I understand he's a competitor; he wants to stay on, but you're not going to do anybody good if you're playing hurt, and especially for a team that's not really competing. You might be hurting your team even more. So. I think being more assertive with his players and making sure that he's making the final decision and not letting. And I understand he's a veteran; he's earned his keep. But at the same time, like those things, again, he's going to learn. There's going to be growing pains with Will Venable. So I'm excited to see what he's going to go on going forward. Like the starter thing, hey, if it's working right now until we get a 5-man rotation that's going to be solid. Understood. We don't have a great bullpen. I understood. There's been a lot of injuries, a lot of call-ups, a lot of sundowns. You don't have the same roster as you started with. So, they DFA'd Clevenger, who just did not work out in the bullpen. Last year he was eating innings for us, and sometimes he'd be good, sometimes he would be bad. So there's a lot of trial and error right now, and I'm excited for that. And before we let you go, and before we plug you where you're at and where your handles are and where they can find your articles, I wanted to get your intake on this piece of new news. The new Chicago White Sox City Connect. It looks like they're connecting with the Chicago Bulls. So they have the pinstripes of the 90 Bulls and the same writing. They have a White Sox patch on the left shoulder, and the hat has the White Sox with the red, looks like the Red Wings on there. So what is your impression, Jack, of this collaboration?
I think I have the unpopular opinion here, but I actually kind of like them. I think I've seen a lot of the immediate social media reaction is pretty negative.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people say like, oh, they look like giveaway jerseys. I would kind of agree with that. I saw some of those comments like, okay, that's kind of fair. They look like some sort of, Bulls night, come to Rate Field and get your, type of giveaway item. I see that, but I think they're pretty cool. I mean, I think the pinstripes is a good look. I think it looks solid with, the black pants. I think the hats are nice. So I would give them a pretty solid grade. I don't think they're the greatest City Connect uniforms, but I think you look across MLB and there's a lot that I would rate a lot worse. So,
yes.
I think it's a little bit funny that, like the comment you just showed. I think it's a little bit funny, like it is very Reinsdorf, like he owns both teams. So he's gonna, I think that aspect is kind of funny to it. But I think they're solid. They're wearing them for the first time on Friday, I think, against the Astros is what they said. So I'm excited to see them. They also said they're going to wear 2 different kinds of hats. Like, obviously for one game they'll all wear the same ones, but like they have hats that they can rotate between. So it seems like people don't really like them, but I think they're solid.
I think the original South Side one is the best City Connect out there.
Yeah, those are better for sure.
Yes.
But I don't get all the negativity around these, or at least initially. I don't know. I think they're all right.
That's okay.
What do you guys think?
The Cubs New Jersey is not that great either, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The whole vaudeville text font, I'm not a fan.
I didn't like the Wrigleyville ones. I think the light blue ones are better than the Wrigleyvilles, but
really, I'm the opposite. I
Really?
thought the Wrigleyville was, I tend to like more modern fonts, I guess, if you
Mhm.
will, than, like I said, like going back to like a vaudeville, like 1920s style text font. I wasn't really a fan of it. But like I said, then you look at the hat. Like I do like the hat of
The hat
the
does look nice. Yeah.
Mhm.
But like I said, the jersey, I was like, I don't know if it's the light blue jersey with that vaudeville C and whatever. I didn't really care for the jersey, especially the names on the back with the font that they use for the names. I do like the White Sox hat, the sock with the wing.
Mhm.
But again, like the jersey, it's just like it looks like a Bulls warm up, like
Yeah.
it just
It does look like a
it looks
giveaway.
good.
It really does.
Yeah,
Because they have
it's a
given
little odd.
basketball jerseys away. So it does look like that kind of aspect, that collaboration. There's tons of great artists in Chicago who are very well known that they could have contacted to do one of these. And that could have been more of a publicity thing, and that you could have had a good collaboration, limited edition, and you could have done more. So Brooks, who I've met a couple times. Brooks, come on. Let's get on that. Jack, thank you for coming out. We'd love to have you back as many times as you can come back. But tell our audience where they can find you and all of that.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun. My Twitter handle, where I will post a lot of stories and updates from the games and clubhouse quotes and stuff, is my ad is at Ankony_Jack. So it's just my last name underscore my first name on Twitter, or X, I guess now. And then I'll also post all of our stories on our Facebook page, which is just Chicago White Sox on SI. Our website, if you just Google White Sox Sports Illustrated, it should pop up first thing, or I guess the URL is si.com and then /MLB/White Sox. So you can get to it that way too. Or just Google White Sox Sports Illustrated and it should pop up. But I appreciate you guys having me on. This was a lot of fun, and I'd love to come back on.
Oh, we'd love to have you back on. I will do my best to add most of all of your articles on there. I literally, once you post it, I try to get the URL and post it onto
Appreciate that.
Chicago sports fans, so that our fans can get your take on what's going on with the White Sox. So, Jack, thank you for joining us. We'll see you very soon, and go White Sox.
Yeah, for sure. See you guys. Have a good one.
All right, take care, Jack.
See ya.
All right, that was Jack Ankony, and he'll be back hopefully soon with us. We've gone almost an hour without a break, so let's take a quick break. And on the flip side, we are going to talk Chicago Cubs, and then we'll bring in our next guest. It is an action-packed Monday. What day it is? Monday. Yeah. White Sox. Oh, I got this song. We're gonna play this song. The song. Yeah. All right, that's enough. I don't want YouTube taking us down. And everybody who's been in the comments, thank you. Israel, I know you have a lot of comments and you're always in there. Thank you for supporting and watching. I just couldn't get to all your comments while we were having that conversation with everybody. Literally talking about you, man. You say, how about me? I'm literally talking about you, man. You're right there. We're acknowledging, bro. So we're gonna take a quick break, and on the flip side, we're gonna talk Chicago Cubs. And we'll get in with our new guest that's coming in. It's going to be Miguel Esparza, who is the voice of the Chicago Cubs on 1200 AM in Spanish. He does speak English. It's okay. Don't go anywhere. So we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Hey there, Chicago enthusiasts. Are you ready to take your fandom to the next level? The True Chicago Sports Fan Podcast has got you covered with some serious cool merch that screams Chicago pride. From cozy sweaters to trendy tank tops, we got it all. Show off your love for the city with our iconic red, white, and blue logo, or stand out with our exclusive collection for the love of sports. Whether you're lounging at home, breaking a sweat at the gym, or cheering on your team at a game, our gear is a must-have for all you diehard Chicago sports fans out there. Don't hesitate. Visit bonfire.com/store/606-media-store/ or simply just click the link in the description and snag your gear ASAP. Get ready to make some noise, show your pride, and embrace the Chicago spirit with True Chicago Sports Fan Podcast merch. Designed for you, the ultimate fan, for the love of sports.
Hey guys, it's Steven.
And this is Sean, and you are listening to True Chicago Sports Fans.
Don't forget to listen to No War on the Weekend. New episodes on Monday. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Yeah, so we're going to go do a couple of shots. So let's kick it back over to Big Z.
Thanks, Sean. Welcome back to the TCSF podcast with Big Z and JC Dynasty Fantasy Football. Thank you to Jack Ankony for joining us from SI WhiteSox. You can find his articles, as he told you, or find them on X or on Facebook. And I do try to put his articles on our Facebook page as much as I can while I'm working and so forth. But definitely lots of good information from Jack. So JC, that's a lot of baseball talk for 1 hour. But we're going to talk a little bit more baseball because we got to talk about the winning team in Chicago.
We're going to my team.
That's right, the winning team, the team that's actually fun to watch. And whatever. I watch a lot of White Sox baseball just because I can't watch Cubs baseball. But the Cubs finally lost a series. Pulling that up right here, to the Phillies this past weekend. The Phillies came in and just gave them the 1-2 chicken piece special. They just gave it to the Cubs.
Yeah, I was planning on going to the game Saturday to get the Bears bobblehead, but as we talked about earlier in the show, I had some technical issues that wasn't able to go. So
yeah, you wouldn't be able to still pull up your ticket. There's no way you could have pulled up a ticket anyways.
No, it would have been a mess. It would have been a disaster, and like I said, I would have taken the photos, and then I would have lost the photos. So. Oh God, yeah. So it's a mess, That said, I'm excited for the Cubs. You know what? Kyle Tucker is still playing amazing. Pete Crow Armstrong is coming alive. I mean, pay both the men. Pay them.
Yeah, you're gonna have to.
Everybody in the stadium needs to have a sign saying "Pay them."
You'll have to. I mean, they're already doing that. Cody from CHGO's, friend of the show, been on the show. He literally has a sign that goes every time he goes to the game. He's like, "Pay to Kyle Tucker." But you do.
I saw Cody's. I think it was his Instagram. There were about 10 of them that all had signs saying "Pay the man," pay Tucker. But like I said, I'm at the point like I'm ready to pay Pete Crow Armstrong. Because, like I said, I mean, he's outplaying his current contract, and it's one of those where, like, we cannot let that kid walk. I mean, his batting stance has changed over the past 3 years, and his bat has come alive with, changing his stance just ever so slightly year to year. Hopefully he doesn't end up like our manager where, it's some goofy, hands are all the way up in the air and, standing all awkward, but we'll see where we get there.
Yeah, he's on a contract. The Cubs. So Pete Armstrong's current contract with the Chicago Cubs is a 1 year, $771,000 deal, right? But he's under club control until 2030 because they drafted him and he would spend time in the minors, so they have complete control of him. So obviously, with his performance increasing year to year, he's going to get paid more.
Right.
So he's not going to leave. He's not able to leave us until 2030. So we got some time.
But you want to keep people happy. I mean, like I said, you're paying a guy $771,000. Like, just be like, hey man, like we appreciate that you are becoming a stud for this team. We're going to raise your salary to $3 million. And then
Okay,
the next
that's
year,
fair.
you know what I mean? Like,
That is
just
completely
show
fair.
the appreciation for what he is doing for the club. You know, just give him a little pay bump. You know,
Oh no, I
saying-
agree with that. I agree. You reward players on performance. I completely agree with you. I thought you were going to go off the deep end and be like, give him 15 million. I'm like, no, come on, he's 770,000 right now. I believe
but that's the thing. When you're paying someone 770,000, like to give him a pay bump of $3 million, where he can go afford a place in Chicago that, you know, get himself a nice place, you know, whether he wants a penthouse somewhere or, you know, he wants, you know, a nice house in wherever, you know, River North, you know, give him a little pay bump, little taste of that, you know, that good life.
All right, JC, I'm gonna play something for you, and I want your reaction, and then we'll bring in our guest Miguel Esparza. So, let me just play something for you real quick.
Morel se quedó. Lanzamiento. Le pone el bate. Lo manda volando al jardín central. ¡Se fue! ¡Home run! Christopher Morel la botó. Y los Cubs ganan el partido. Morel se quita la camisa. Empiezan a brincar en la lonita llegando al plato. Los Chicago Cubs dejan sobre el terreno de juego a los White Sox de Chicago. Morel, walk off. Morel la ganó.
All right, two things before you answer. One, don't say anything about the White Sox because we know they suck. Okay, leave that be. That dog is dead over there. Leave it alone. Second of all, you cannot tell me that sports in Spanish is not better.
I was just about to say, you know what? I understand none of it. However, the enthusiasm in which it is delivered, I love it. You know, like that's for me, like I am not a soccer person. However, when the World Cup is on, I am constantly one of those people where it's like, I want to watch the World Cup in other languages because it is so passionate. It is so fiery. It is like, you know, when I'm sure you've heard those soccer announcers where like they'll go on a 1 minute long go. I mean, and they hold it, and it's just like, man, like the passion that they have for the game and the delivery of everything. I love it. Like I said, I don't understand any of it, but I love it.
Well, we're going to bring in our guest who actually made that call, Senor Miguel Esparza, who is the Cubs Spanish broadcast announcer. Thank you for coming in, Miguel. Thank you. Hey, yeah, there he is. That is the coolest bobblehead ever.
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming on. Yeah, man, dude. That was a call. I mean, who can argue that? Doesn't matter what team allegiance you have. You can appreciate when you have a great voice in the announce booth. You know, guys like Bob Uecker. You had why am I blanking right now? There's been so many, right? You've had Harry Carey,
Pat Hughes. Pat Hughes. You put Pat Hughes in there, and
of course,
just delivers this, the way he delivers, the sound of his voice just embraces you.
Oh yeah, Pat Hughes. When you hear him on the radio, you feel like you're there. He's literally telling a story and painting a picture, and you feel like you're walking into the stadium as he's doing the announcements and the lineups, and he's got that baseball voice, and you're doing that now for the Spanish audience. And I really think that you need your flowers because you are killing it, brother. You are killing it.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you. I do it with a passion, and when you get to a point where you know that people depend on you to listen to the sport that they love and the team that they love, it raises that level of commitment for me and the rest of my team, and so we strive to make put the best out there that we can.
Yeah. Obviously, if you don't know, Miguel was on Intoxicated, and we went into his story and how he got to that. And I don't want to go into that today, but being in the Spanish booth, because you also do it for the rest of the sports in the city, which is the Bears, the Blackhawks, the Bulls, and then you do it for a college team. And so you're doing that for so many different teams, so many different sports. So the vernacular to try to translate all those terms and situations in Spanish, how hard is that?
Well, it's very hard. First of all, because again, I have to make sure that I'm delivering the best, right? The best broadcast possible. And when you go on different sports, there are terms that don't translate, and you have to come up with a term, and you have to make sure that it sounds the right way, and it's explaining exactly what you're trying to say. And something that I take pride in is making sure that my broadcast is unique. I'm not looking to sound like anybody else. I respect everybody else that's in the booth. And when I talk about that, I talk about the Spanish language booth. I respect every one of those, and not that I don't the counterparts in English, right? But my job is in Spanish, right? So I look at them and I respect their work. However, I want to be set apart, right? And part of that is making sure that what I deliver is of my own. For example, my home run call, La Botó. There's nobody else in the league that will use that home run call. That's unique to me. I came up with it, and the way it happened was David Bodie had his walk-up song was La Boté, and I'm half Puerto Rican. And so for us, botar is to throw something away, right? So I was like, man, you know what? I heard the song, something clicked, and I was like, La Botó. So that's where the home run came from, and now it's been, here and there. I get people like when I'm walking around Wrigley, they'll yell La Botó, which is pretty cool. Yeah. And it goes to the terms as well. For all the different sports, I make sure that there are some terms specifically in baseball that I don't like in Spanish that some other people have created, and I make sure that I do it my way.
Well, what is one? So let's talk about that. What is something that you don't like?
Earned run average, right? When you talk about ERA, in Spanish, a lot, if not all, call it efectividad. To me, that means being effective, right? And you can't be effective if you have a 5.8 ERA, right? So for me, I translate it as is and what it is. Promedio de carreras permitidas, which means exactly that, which is the earned run average, right? So I make sure that I'm delivering on that side, make sure that I'm explaining the sport the right way, and not that I'm an expert by any means, right? But I try to make sure that what we do is very, very legit and again, unique.
JC?
Why is it that when white people are doing the announcing, it is so stale, but then when we get your delivery, it's so passionate? I'm talking as a white person, as a gringo. Like, there's no passion from my people on the delivery. Like, it's like
you can't call baseball like it's golf. Okay, you can't do it. All right, and let me give you a good example with the World Baseball Classic, and it's in Miami. And everyone is bringing instruments and they're playing songs and they're chanting. They're engaged every single minute of the game because they have a passion for the sport. It's just different.
And that's the word. I think it's passion, right? It's passion that sets that part apart from everyone else. And I'm not saying that our counterparts in English don't have the passion for it. But I'm very unique in the sense that I get to broadcast for my teams, right? I get to broadcast for the Chicago Bulls, which is the team that I grew up watching, for the Chicago Blackhawks. I didn't grow up a big hockey fan, but for the Chicago Cubs, I grew up a Cubs fan, right? My father took me there at a young age, and I was able to fall in love with the team at a young age. And then now that I get to do this, I'm a fan, right? I'm a fan. I have to keep certain level of professionalism, but sometimes it's very hard for me. But at the same time, I transmit that passion of a Cubs fan calling a game. Now, in 2020, it was very unique for me because I was broadcasting for the White Sox. And right there, it was tough because obviously, again, I have to be professional and I have to be excited, right, for a team that's not my team. What I did do, I had my Cubs watch on. So I made sure that I stayed true to myself in that way.
I'm not hating. If I got hired by the Cubs, I do everything to promote the Cubs, and I would still probably wear my White Sox something inside somewhere.
Yeah,
right.
And the organization was great to me. I had, it was 1 year, but everyone there treated me very well. I really enjoyed it. I always say there's a very small part of my heart that's right there with the White Sox. Very, very small, but it's there because they treated me so well. And I was able to be in a ballpark when Lucas Giolito threw a no-hitter, and it was a handful of people. You had the two teams, and then it was just a handful of people that were there.
Right.
And I was part of that.
Right. You were working with Hector, I believe.
Hector Molina, yeah.
Yeah. So he's been there he's been a White Sox broadcaster for years.
A legend, the man.
A legend. And I do remember that because I remember listening with my dad to White Sox game on 1200 because they used to have the White Sox. And that's how Hector and I can't remember the other
Billy Russo. So Billy is his counterpart. Yeah. So the situation why I was there was because Billy is also the translator for the White Sox for the players. So during the COVID season, they couldn't have him be with the players and be in the booth.
Right.
They had different sections, and that was one that he cannot cross over. So that's when they brought me in.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Wow. You came over to the dark side. I hope you enjoyed it. I mean,
I did. It was closer to my house. I was there in a short time, but again, everyone treated me very well. It was a great experience for me.
Before we get into what's going on with the current Cubs team right now, I wanted to ask how difficult is it to work with, because you do all these different sports, to come into a booth and work with different analysts or play-by-play, because sometimes you may have to switch roles, right? With different partners in different sports, how difficult is that, and what goes into giving a great broadcast to mesh it together?
Right. So for me, my role never changes. I'm always play-by-play. And my guys have Elio and Jorge, which I've worked with now for quite a handful of years actually. And we've created so the special thing about them two and myself is that we're actually friends outside of the booth, right? And that helps so much because you create chemistry, and that chemistry is real. Many years ago, I was doing a morning show on WLEY, and the program director there made me and my co-host go out to lunch every day and go out to the movies every day, and not every day, but here and there. And we became so close. We even went on vacation together. So it was one of those that we created that chemistry being together for that long, and now, with both Elio and Jorge, they know what I need from them, and they know exactly when to provide it. So it's real cool the relationship that we have and the way that we mesh together, right? And so Jorge is my analyst full time for the Blackhawks. Elio's analyst full time for the Bulls, and then between Elio and Jorge, they split up the games for the Cubs season.
Oh wow, that's super cool, super cool. JC, you got any questions? Because I could keep talking to this man all day.
No, I guess a question just off of what we were just talking about is, how hard is it to say switch from like play-by-play to commentary? To me, like, I feel like once you're in a niche, that it kind of would be hard to go to commentary when you're used to providing the play-by-play. Do you find it difficult to switch, or do you, like you say, normally are the play-by-play?
Right. Well, nowadays, I've been able to, so I've grown a lot in the last couple of years as a professional, and it's helped, to be able to switch different roles in the sense of, for example, when I was doing the White Sox, I was the color analyst for Hector Molina. So there I knew exactly what I needed to provide, right? And I was analyst when I started with the Bulls, right? So it was one of those that I started on that side of it. And in all my radio career, I've learned that you need to do everything and anything within what you're doing, right? And from my early on in my life and my career, I know how to do the engineering side, promotion side, sales side, programming side. So I learned everything. And now with again, my professional growth, I'm more mature now than when I started, and I've been able to see exactly what I need to do to get better, right? And that's one of them. So this year, this is the first year that we're broadcasting the full season. So 162 in Spanish, never been done. This is the first year that with the Cubs we're doing this. So it's very special for us. And within that commitment, the tail end of Bulls and Blackhawks, they meshed. And before we didn't have that issue because we weren't doing every game. So there were a handful of games that I had to do by myself. And there I did the role of play-by-play and analyst, right? I had to make sure that I was providing everything that I normally get from Jorge and Elio, but I had to do the play-by-play and provide that as well. So, it was one of those that it really, at the first one that I did a couple of them last year, I believe, or 2 years ago by myself. But at that point, I wasn't the professional that I am now. Now, for me, it was it was just getting into a different rhythm and knowing exactly in the years of doing this, what I've learned that's necessary to provide. And then being able to find all that, right? Because it was one of those where it's like, I tell the guys a lot, the one of the most important things within the sports is situational awareness, right? You have to know exactly what's going on. For example, there's a pitcher that's already at 8 strikeouts and it's the 4th inning. So that tells you he's either going to get close to a career high or it's going to get close to a record for the team, or, those little things that when you start seeing that happen, you're like, okay, I have to be ready for this. But at the same time, I have to be calling the game, right? I have to be doing play-by-play. So to answer the question, there are both very difficult jobs. And it all depends, again, how much do you really want to give? Because you can half-ass it, right? But at the end of the day, everyone's going to know and say, like, well, what are they providing? They're not providing me with what I really want to hear, right?
Yeah, definitely. I can imagine, because I do a little bit of everything right here. I've got a couple of screens, a board, going. I do understand, and JC is now starting to understand himself now that he has equipment too. That it's not so easy to be doing stats while talking, while the board is right, the sound levels are not clipping. You're doing all these things, but as like you said, you become a professional, you get used to it. It becomes almost second nature to be moving around and multitasking.
Yes, and that's something like, I don't know if you have this issue of like somebody talking in your ear telling you, hey, we need to go to commercial break, we need to talk about this, things of that nature, where somebody might be jumping in your ear while you're trying to give commentary or while you're trying to provide play-by-play. How do you manage something like that if you have to deal with that, where, like I said, you're trying to provide play-by-play, but you have like a producer or someone in your ear trying to tell you something else, or hey, we need to discuss, like, this pitcher has hit this milestone. How do you deal with trying to talk while receiving instructions?
Right. So so as a Spanish broadcaster, I don't know if this is the rest of the league, but I don't have a producer. So it's everything that we provide, we come up with, right? Wow. Everything that, yes, we don't have that. We don't have the guy that's feeding us. I don't have a guy telling me, Miguel, you need to read this. No, I know that I have to read this, and I have in front of me written down what needs to be read when. So many years ago, when I first started doing radio, we used to do broadcast remotes. Mm-hmm. And in those broadcast remotes, we had to listen on a Walkman, and we had to listen for the cue on the radio, but you kept that on and you were talking and you were still hearing your bounce back.
Your feedback.
A lot of people can't handle that. So from that early on, it trained my ear so that nothing bothers me. So that I could be talking and they could talk in my ear. It doesn't matter. It could bounce back in my ear. I could get feedback in my ear. It doesn't matter, because I know what I need to do. And this is something that I tell my team as well. Doesn't matter what happens in your ears. The show must go on, and because people that are listening to you don't know that something's happening, right? So that's something that you have to keep to yourself, and you have to make sure that it's getting fixed. And if it's not getting fixed, well, you know what? Guess what? You still have to broadcast, right? And you still have to tough it out and make sure that your broadcast sounds good. Ideally, yeah, that'll be great. I see, like, yesterday we were working next to ESPN, and Boog is getting fed, right? Like they're giving him everything. Like they have this guy right behind him who's constantly sending papers their way, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But we don't have that luxury, right? We don't have it. But I say this, it makes us 10 times better because we know what we need, where we need it, where to find it, right? We have those tools and we know how to use the tools. So that's something that's very big for us.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it makes you more spontaneous, more natural, instead of like robotic. Oh, I got to read this, and then you can tell when guys have to do the read. Their inflection in voice is completely different. So I completely understand where it doesn't feel natural, where you're like, okay, and you kind of just tie that in so seamlessly because you've done it for so long, especially being on radio and being on remotes where you're live. There's no safety net, and you're live now. But to that point, I wanted to ask, would you want to do a broadcast, a TV broadcast in Spanish?
In Spanish, I'd love it. See, I don't know if I could do it in English. I've never tried play-by-play in English, which is crazy, right? I never tried it. I don't know. Like if someday Marquee comes a knocking, there's an emergency, Miguel, we need you. Will I do it? Absolutely. But again, it's not something that I've ever done. I've never even like practiced it on my own, trying to say, well, let me get ready, right? I've never tried it. The first time I ever did anything in English was when I became a news anchor on WBBM News Radio. And that was a big challenge for me just because it was a personal challenge, right? I challenged myself because all my career I've done everything in Spanish. And I was like, well, I definitely have to step out, right? I have to try this. And I was very successful over there. And I was very happy. Great team that I had that opportunity to do. But going back to the question, I would love for Marquee to say one day, you know what, we're going to have the broadcast in Spanish, right? And then if you flip to SAP, you could listen to Boog and JD, right? I think that would be real cool to do, and I would definitely love it.
Yeah, I kind of feel like also like TV broadcasts, because people are seeing what's happening in the game versus a radio broadcast. Like the play-by-play has to be way more specific over the radio because you're trying to bring the play to life. The ball's hit to third to over to the Danzy Sponswin, and you're trying to describe all these things as they're happening, where with live TV, I feel like you can kind of let some of that go because they're seeing it happen. Like it doesn't need to be explained or talked out, where, like I said, the radio, you really have to be on top of it. So I feel like I think it would be interesting, especially like, from a video broadcast, because it would challenge you of like, how much feedback or how much information do I need to give, like on a broadcast?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's something that I've thought about, and it's a totally different world. But I know this. I know also that on Marquee, you definitely have someone in your ear at all times, right? You have somebody telling you, we're going to put this board up, we're going to put this up, and that's something that is constant. So it'll be a challenge if the day comes. Yes, I'll definitely take the opportunity, right? But it's not something that I ever thought about. I love what I do in radio. I was told at a very young age I have a face for radio, so I've been there ever since. I actually just celebrated 24 years in radio, which was in April of 2001. First time I actually went into radio, and it's been quite a ride, right? And I'm very happy where I am at this point. I love radio broadcasting because, like you said, we have to paint a picture, and that's something that I take pride in, especially when I'm broadcasting hockey, where that puck is going all over the place, and it's very, very important to be able to transmit that through the radio.
Yeah, and so I'm over here thinking, I'm like, we almost have like almost 1 million Hispanic Latinos in Chicago, and the Chicagoland area is probably more. If you were to be put on like 44.2, right? Because you can't mess up with people's novelas, right?
Yeah.
or 66.2.
Right.
Definitely where you can bring in that Latino audience and speak and have a broadcast in their native language, kind of what they're used to coming from their home countries, or even if they're first or second generation where they do understand it and they prefer or feel more comfortable listening to the sport in Spanish.
Right.
Or like JC, I'm going to watch it in Spanish because it's way more exciting. I don't know what you're saying, but I can put closed captions and read along, right?
Yeah, and it's cool because with Marquee, we do have the SAP option where people can tune in. Obviously, it's radio broadcast on TV, right? But it's real cool. Yeah. It's real cool that we have that available. We have the MLB app, so we're on the MLB app, and we get listeners from around the world. It's amazing when we get messages from London and Spain, and we get messages from Chile, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Cuba, La República Dominicana, from all over the place. And it's like, again, it just brings that commitment, right? It raises it so much more because you know that these people are out here listening to you, and we've had a great response now that we're doing the 162. Everyone's like, finally we could listen to the away games. So it's been this first part of the season has been very exciting for us, not only because of what the team is doing, but on a personal level for us as a team.
Well, you're providing a service that people want, and it's finally, you were just doing the home games, I'm assuming, right?
Yep,
okay.
That was it.
So now you're doing away games from home. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we're doing so for now. Hopefully this changes in a couple of years. I'd say in a year or two we'd be out with the team. That'd be great. Last year we did take a trip to Dodger Stadium, and we went to Colorado as well on that road trip. So that was real cool for us. This year we're taking the Milwaukee trip because why not? It's down the street, right? So we're broadcasting those games from Milwaukee. And it's one of those that eventually we'll get there, right? And eventually we'll say, well, now we're traveling full time with the team. Every other home, away game we broadcasted from Wrigley Field, so it's real cool because we get the park to ourselves on those night games. It's like it's crazy. You're looking out the window and it's black, right? There's nothing out there. And then you get out and you're able to walk the park and nobody there. So it's real cool.
Yeah, you were doing that for the Tokyo series. I remember.
Yeah. We were there. I got there at 3:30 in the morning, man. It was crazy. Yeah.
It's empty. It's ghost town. Wrigleyville's a ghost town at that point.
It's ghost town, man. It like, again, even during the week, like tomorrow, we're there for Pittsburgh, the start of the Pittsburgh series, and it's real cool. Like I said, just having that kind of access to the ballpark. There's a guy on social media who hides and tries to stay like after the game it has ended, right? See how long he can stay at the ballpark. And for me, it's like I'm there, right? It's like it's real cool because I get to see Wrigley at dark, at night.
Yeah, that's cool. I know this has been so cool, but talk to me about the Dodger series that the Cubs just had, where you had the Dodger invasion, the Dodger nation come really deep into Wrigley, only to get their butt kicked for 2 games.
It was interesting. I had never seen anything like it. Honestly, I had never seen a team roll in so deep, and they shut down Clark, and Jeremiah Paprocki, the voice of Wrigley, came into my booth. He's like, "Man, they're having a parade out there. Come and see." So I went over and took a look and recorded. I was doing a TikTok live at the moment, so I took my TikTok over there, and it was crazy. It was real. Like, again, props to them for organizing that way and going out there and rolling in deep, right? But the team did what they've been doing. This Cubs team is special. This Cubs team has found a way to win games when you're able to. Out of the 8-game homestand that you just had, you won both series. The Diamondbacks, you took 2 out of 3, swept the Dodgers. You fell, 2 out of 3 to the Phillies. But again, it's a very successful one, and it gives you that good taste in mouth, right? It gives you that good taste, and you're like, okay, if you would have seen something like this within the first 10 games as we did, I wasn't too excited about it because I was like, it could be a fluke, right? It could be something that is just happening because of this or that, right? But after 29 games, you're like, okay, this is real. Now you can start looking at numbers. You can start seeing Cubs, they're leading the majors. What is it, in RBI and in hits and stolen bases, number 3 in batting average. It's a real good time. Crazy offense, obviously. What I saw the last couple of games, I saw a lot of strikeouts. So that's a big difference from the beginning of this real good stretch for the Cubs. And then as I was looking at the notes yesterday, there were the Dansby Swanson came into that game, I believe, with 12 strikeouts in homestand. So you start looking at that and you're like, okay, they have to go back to that patience, right? To elevating that on base percentage and those base on balls. Kyle Tucker has been incredible. PCA has been great. It's one of those things that you start looking everywhere and you see, okay, now we're starting to see a constant starting lineup. It's not changing much. Just third base is the biggest question for this team. A lot of people had a lot of questions about the bullpen. And there were stretches where it was like, okay, this needs to get fixed. But then you saw someone like Porter Hodge or even Ryan Presley that I myself had doubts. I'm like, this guy's already so old. Like, how effective can he really be? But he has been. Like, he found a great rhythm. And so I look at all that and I'm like, okay, now I'm looking at a real team. Now I can see these numbers, and these numbers are not those numbers from the first 5 or 6 games where you start seeing batters in 300, 400 batting average, right? You start seeing real numbers that it's been a good number of at-bats.
It's been a fun team to watch. You know, they were down in that one game, that crazy game against Arizona about 10 days ago.
Yeah, Friday.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, nuts. I'm like, oh my God, Arizona just scored a bunch of runs. Oh, damn, that Cubs bullpen. All my Cubs fans on Facebook and it's damn bullpen. And then I was like, dude, have you not seen this team? Like, the game is not over. They do not quit. So they come back and put 6 runs and win the game. You know, they are finding ways to win, unlike my team that finds ways to lose. But
hey, Luis Robert is up there. He's, what is he? Number 4 stolen bases, 5, is he? I love to see that from Robert. You know, I'm a huge fan of Luis Robert. Like, to me, that guy, if he can stay healthy and you know, he can be a superstar still.
He has the tools. He has the tools. It's just right now I feel like he's trying to do too much. He's swinging out of the zone. He's batting like 150, 160. He did have a home run against the Athletics. And I kind of feel like he's like Alexi Ramirez. I said this earlier in the show. It takes a while for him to warm up. He's like an old Buick. You got to let it run for a couple minutes before he can take off, right?
That's the only autographed piece that I have from the White Sox. It's an autographed ball from Luis Robert.
Nice. Yeah, these Cubs, for me, definitely a fun watch. And then we said this when we started covering baseball this season, that this was going to be the hardest month for the Chicago Cubs, and it can either break their season if they struggle early, or if they end up 500 or better, it's going to put them in a trajectory to do so well, and which everyone had doubts about the Chicago Cubs, and they didn't add this, and they didn't sign this guy, and they didn't do this.
Right.
Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins are looking very, very good right now.
You know, I'll tell you, and after that real tough stretch, right, now you have the opportunity to go in there and face the Pittsburgh Pirates. You're going into Milwaukee, right? These are very important games. So you're still leading the division. You're up as of right now 1.5 games, and this is when you have to start, you know, winning these games against your division. Because everything else was real nice to be able to beat the Dodgers, to be able to beat the Diamondbacks. You know, you look at the Philly series was very close. There were moments that you could have, you know, taken that game. Unfortunately for us, Ben Brown had a catastrophic 4th inning, right? And that really just set us back to the point where when you're down 6-0 in the 4th, you're like, okay, how do you come back, right? Unless it was that Friday game where you put, you know, those 6 on the run and on the board, and you that's not sustainable, right? You can't depend on that 100%. So it just becomes a point where this team, again, I feel that they've found something, and specifically, I can say the lineup just being so constant, just having that same lineup. The only thing that's changed is your 8 and 9, and that's where you have the switch between Amaya and Carson Kelly, and then 9 would be your third baseman, right? And that's the biggest question for this team, third base. That's where you have a problem at this point. And again, Matt Shaw starting to warm up down there in AAA Iowa. So that, gives you a little bit of hope, because the kid can do it with the glove. There's no question. The guy is solid at third base, but we need production when it comes to the offensive side.
Let me bring up a topic right quick, seeing as, you're around the organization more than we are, but Horton, with Justin Steele going down, do we ever see him coming up this year? Have you heard anything around the organization of, Horton and how things are going with him?
I'm the last one to hear anything, but no. I haven't heard anything. I think obviously we were hoping for Javier Assad to come back soon. He suffered a setback, right? So that really derails a little bit. What we have seen, and not to go away from Horton at all, but what I've seen with Colin Ray, Matthew Boyd, like these guys have been solid for us, right? So that's something that helps this rotation when you lose a guy like Justin Steele. And that outing when he got injured, the man went out there, it was cold, 7 innings. It was a great outing for him. So unfortunate that he went in that way. But again, I feel that they have something good with Colin Ray, with Matthew Boyd. Obviously, Ben Brown needs to be better, and that's what Craig Counsell said after that game. We need better, right? And that's the reality. You need to give at least those 6 solid innings to be able to be part of that rotation. And for the Chicago Cubs, I think that's the biggest problem, right? You need to have where Ben Brown is. It needs to get fixed at some point. And I was hoping that was Javier Assad to come in, or even Javier Assad. Let's say that Ben Brown can only pitch 3 or 4, right? Then Javier Assad is your long reliever, right? That's something that can happen. And so it's just, again, it's been fun, to say the least. And hoping that the bullpen can definitely maintain this rhythm that they've seen lately.
Yeah, I was just curious because, Horton was supposed to have come up last year.
Yeah.
And he suffered an injury. And then, last week when we were discussing the Cubs, I brought up Horton, because of the Justin Steele situation. And, it kind of seemed like he has had a couple outings there in AAA, maybe hasn't gone very deep. So I was just curious if there were any rumblings around the organization of how things are going with him, and if we see him coming up potentially, at some point this season after he was supposed to have come up last year,
right?
But that got postponed, obviously, due to injury. And like I said, the other thing we constantly discuss on here is that, ever since Chapman and Kimbrel, having that ace closer, something that the Cubs are constantly always chasing, is a stud closer. Do we see our availability, or some, we're discussing that we need a third baseman, but I think having a stud closer as well would help us out in the long run as well.
Yeah, no, and that's obviously, coming into the season, that was one of the biggest, what's going to happen there, right? When they signed Ryan Presley, right? When they signed him, and they said, he obviously waived his no trade clause, right? But he said, I want to be the closer. I wasn't on board, right? I was like, he wasn't their closer last year, so he has in the past, right? But how good can he really be? I feel at this point that he's been real good. He's been able to throw the breaking ball for a strike to begin a lot of these at bats, and coming from taking the ball from Porter Hodge has been real good in that situation as well. So I feel that the back end of our bullpen is good. I feel that where we have a little issue was that first one coming in, that middle relief coming in, and one thing that I do like that I've seen this year, and I haven't seen it a lot, the patience on the side of, let's say, the manager or the organization with someone who's made mistakes often or coming out of the bullpen and just really messing up, right? For example, Gage Workman. He had terrible game. He had terrible outings at third. They DFA'd him, right? And then ultimately traded to the White Sox. I feel that tells me that they really are interested in winning. Ethan Roberts. Ethan Roberts struggled. I think it was 2 games ago. He didn't look good at all. And next day, he's optioned to AAA, right? So I feel that the way they're working now, it's like, hey, if you're not going to help out this team that's doing real good right now, you're not going to just have a spot on this team just because, right? And they're going to be able to make these changes, which now that I see it, I like it. I like that attitude. I like that, hey, we're going to hold you accountable. You're going to AAA, and you're going to be – it happened with Matt Shaw as well, right? Matt Shaw, solid third baseman, but his bat was just not doing anything. He was getting a lot of base on balls, which was great, but at the same time, when you have those runners on and you can't bring them home, then, that becomes a problem for you.
It definitely does. I know. There's options, right? We're looking. It's early. We're at the beginning of May, end of April. How do you fix not having that 5th starter? Are you personally? What would you do? Would you wait for Cade Horton to mature and get his innings and get his feet wet, or are you going out there and exploring a trade for a 5th starter from one of these teams that obviously are not competing? Your Pirates, your White Sox, your Colorado. Are you exploring one of those?
I think that you definitely explore it. However, I think that you hope, right, that Ben Brown can be the Ben Brown that we hope he can, right? That we've seen those glimpses of Ben Brown being able to be that guy, and I feel that the organization has that patience for Ben Brown. And again, if it comes down to let's say that Javier is able to get past this setback and have him in that and bring him out of the bullpen in the 4th inning, right? If it comes down to that. But yeah, ultimately, if I think you look at where you are, right, when that time comes around and you see where this team is as of right now, I see this team taking that division without a problem.
Yeah, I don't see any problem with the division. I think at the beginning of the year we kind of like had a consensus that they at minimum make the wild card, but the way they come out swinging in April, and if they can keep this kind of pace where they're above 500, they don't go in a long losing streak. The sky's the ceiling, right? But like you were just showing us, if you're not producing for us, we're moving on, and that's the right attitude.
I think so too.
Winning organization. You look at winning organizations like the Dodgers and the Yankees, where like, yeah, this guy's not cutting it. See ya. We'll cut ties with you. We'll eat the money. We'll send you off with DFA. Whatever we got to do to get the next guy up that's going to produce, because we are a winning organization, and it's refreshing to have that in Chicago. I'm glad it's the Cubs. I'm still, I'm a White Sox fan, but still, I'm glad it's still one of the teams in Chicago is actually doing that, because I don't feel like the rest of the teams, and I'm going to speak for my teams, the Bulls and the White Sox, I don't feel like they're doing that. I know they're going through rebuilds and some changes, but I don't feel like they're there. They will ride a guy until the wheels fall off.
I know it's not my place, but how about that City Connect, huh? That looks sweet.
Let me just say that I like the hat. That was the conversation before you came out. Yeah,
like sweet. I wouldn't wear it, right? But I like it.
What do you mean? Aren't you gonna have to wear it on the broadcast?
Absolutely not. Nope, not happening. Not happening. It's not. It's But I think it was even inside the hat or on the neck where they have the championships, both for the Bulls and the White Sox. I think that's the touches on that was just done perfectly. I love it.
What do you think of the new City Connect for the Chicago Cubs?
Well, so here's the thing. It's actually not a City Connect. It's an alternate jersey. The City Connect, I believe, it's coming out next year. So their City Connect still is the Wrigleyville. So this one kind of replaced it, but not really, because it's not a City Connect. But I love that. I love the design. I love music. So anything you could give me, sports and music related, I'm gonna love it and I'm gonna eat it up, right? So it looks to me, I love the colors. I love everything about it, all the details. So I'm happy with it for sure.
That's awesome.
They look sweet. They look sweet every time they wear those. There's like, oh, that's sharp for sure.
Oh man, that one you do wear around there, huh?
Yeah, for sure. That I will wear.
Let's put a bow on this. Where do you see the Cubs ending up at the end of the season?
See, I don't like getting into that because I don't know, right? I'm not a betting man.
Well,
I tried it and I sucked.
Start off with the division then. Let's just start off with the division.
The division, I definitely feel like that they will win that division, right? I think that's something that will happen. And like any team, this is one thing that I know that will happen. I know that Dansby's going to start warming up as soon as that weather's warming up. This man's out of Marietta, Georgia, right? And you bring him to Chicago to play, like he's going to be cold. So I know that a lot of these guys are going to start warming up even more when the weather starts getting better. So I feel that this team has a very good opportunity to be real good. And it's exciting, right? I think like when the feel around the ballpark, the feel with the people in the ballpark, the ushers, the vendors, everyone's excited to be there. And it's a fun time around the ballpark. So it's real good. I definitely feel like this is going to be a good year for us. I'll tell you one thing, and you could take this maybe as your answer, but the last time that I saw a team that showed no quit was 2016. No matter where they were, no matter how bad they were losing that game, they were coming back. And that's what I see of this team. And this is the first time I see it since that time. So we'll leave it at that. I'm not going to say World Series, but imagine me calling a home run to the World Series. Let's go.
Yeah, you would be, because you don't get replaced like the TV guys.
Right.
You go all the way through, which is amazing. Miguel, this has been amazing. You can come on to our show anytime. I know we got you on a perfect day when no teams are playing that you cover.
Today's my laundry day, vacuum day. I didn't want to leave my house. I had to go return a package. I told my brother, hey man, can you do me a favor? I need to return this. I don't want to leave my house today. So he was the MVP today. So yes, it was perfect. It's crazy with the 162. It's a grind. It's a grind. The month of May that's coming up, I'll have 4 days off in that month, and it'll be 4 out of the 5 Thursdays.
4 out of the 5 Thursdays. Okay. All right. Yeah. Good to know when I can hit you up.
Yes, sir. Gentlemen, you have a great one. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much. Miguel, share your socials so people can follow you really quick.
Miguel's Voice. You can find me on TikTok, on Twitter, on Instagram, YouTube, Miguel's Voice.
All right, Miguel, thank you so much for joining us. We'll have you soon. Have a great season if we don't get to talk to you the rest of the season, but definitely check him out. He's a good singer.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, Miguel.
Take care, guys.
Have a good day.
All right, that was Miguel Esparza, the voice of the Bulls, the Cubs, the Blackhawks, the Bears. Oh my God, he is the Spanish voice for all those teams, and the man is a hard worker. I don't know how he does it. Now he's doing 162 for the Chicago Cubs, and you can see he is homegrown and raised in my neighborhood, which is like the West Town Ukrainian Village, Noble Square area. Born and raised here. So glad to see one of our own doing very well for themselves. So, JC, are you ready for some football?
Oh, I am ready, sir.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and JC's gonna break down the draft because I am tired. I'm tired. This has been a marathon, but a good marathon because we've had some great, amazing guests, and it just so happened that they were both available today because both teams were off. But we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Hey there, Chicago enthusiasts. Are you ready to take your fandom to the next level? The True Chicago Sports Fan Podcast has got you covered with some serious cool merch that screams Chicago pride. From cozy sweaters to trendy tank tops, we got it all. Show off your love for the city with our iconic red, white, and blue logo, or stand out with our exclusive collection for the love of sports. Whether you're lounging at home, breaking a sweat at the gym, or cheering on your team at a game, Our gear is a must-have for all you diehard Chicago sports fans out there. Don't hesitate. Visit bonfire.com/store/606-media-store/. Or simply just click the link in the description and snag your gear ASAP. Get ready to make some noise, show your pride, and embrace the Chicago spirit with True Chicago Sports Fan podcast merch. Designed for you, the ultimate fan, for the love of sports.
What up? It's Martin Moreno, and you are listening to True Chicago Sports Fans podcast.
Back to the TCSF podcast with Big Z in the house. We got JC, Dynasty Fantasy Football, and it is time for JC to shine. And we're going to talk about our Chicago football team, the Chicago Bears, who just wrapped up their draft. And we're going to do a little music to get in there. There we go. There we go. Boom, baby, boom. We are done with the draft. JC, take it away with all of our picks and what your thoughts are.
Let's start with the fact that, rumors were of first day of the draft, we were trying to move up. We were trying to get some specific players. Personally, everyone keeps saying like, oh, we were in it for Genty. We were in it for Genty. I think we were in it for Carter. And once Carter was out of there, and not only that, as Poles has said in some of his press conferences, is that, once you find out what the asking price is from some of these teams to move up, it got a little too rich. For the Jacksonville Jaguars to move up from 5 to 2, they gave up quite a bit. And then
that was a ransom.
Then you look at what the Arizona, but the Atlanta Falcons gave up to move up to get James Pierce, and that was a haul as well. And that was later in the first, so I couldn't even imagine they gave up next year's first and a bunch of other picks,
right,
to move up, to get James Pierce. So for me personally, look, I'm not mad at what we did. We stood at 10, and, did we take best available? Some people would argue that Warren, they like Warren better. We'll see in the long run. To me, Colson Loveland is more of a Brock Bowers, Kelsey, Jimmy Graham type, where you're more of a wide receiver, split out wide, and you're able to separate and get downfield. To me, Warren, when you watched his film, Warren really reminded me of in his prime, Jason Witten, where he was a fantastic inline blocker that was able to get, 10, 15 yards downfield. He'd pick up the first downs, consistent hands, but he wasn't that guy that would get you 25, 35 yards downfield. You watch Warren's film and he would get 25, 35 yard receptions, but that's because he would break some tackles and make it downfield. But it wasn't where he's making the reception 25 yards downfield.
Got it.
He's taking a 10, 15 yard pass and turning it into a 25 yard catch and run. So that's my opinion. Colson Loveland, here we go. Ran a 4.65 40 at the combine, 21 years old, 6'6", 245 pounds. All right. So at 245 pounds, he might have to put on a little weight, a little more muscle. No problem. Our training staff will have no problem doing that. He's got the frame to do it. All right. In his 3 years in college, year one, 16 receptions, 235 yards, 2 touchdowns. Sophomore season, 45 receptions, 649 yards, 4 touchdowns. All right. That was with JJ McCarthy. This year had a little bit of quarterback issues there in Michigan. Guys not being able to stay healthy. 56 receptions for 582 yards.
He was also hurt.
Correct. So it's one of those where, his numbers were not as flashy as Warren, but he's 21 years old. He is super young, where Warren is a little older. And right as of right now, you got Komet, who will be the inline blocker, and Loveland is going to be the guy stretched out wide in the 12 personnel, playing more of a wide receiver, tight end role. The Jimmy Graham role, if you will, that Jimmy Graham used to play for the Saints. We all have now heard the news from can't think of his name because I want to say Schefter, but I know it's not Schefter. It was the other NFL analyst basically saying that teams were looking to move up, and as soon as the Bears drafted Loveland, all phone calls stopped, from teams trying to move up. So it sounds like, and again, maybe it was the guy before Loveland, but it sounds like Loveland was a guy that was on multiple teams' radars to move up and snag. And that once the Bears took him, all phone calls stopped until like the late and mid 20s. So if that is true, and if that is a sign to all Bears fandom that not just the Bears saw this kid as a top tier talent, but multiple teams were looking to move up to snag this kid, that should tell you right there that, we got a guy that is looked at very highly, not only by our organization, but by other organizations. Most of the grades for the Colson Loveland pick were B+ to an A for the pick. So that is fantastic. Like I said, we'll see what happens this year, because the next guy we're going to talk about is another offensive weapon, and it's how many balls are there to go around. That's another issue. One ball to go around, usually 60 offensive plays, to a game, somewhere between 48 and 60 offensive plays. And that said, there's a run game as well on those offensive plays. So, and we know Ben Johnson loves to run the football. So that said, next player that the Bears drafted is Luther Burden. His 40 time at the combine was a 4.41. He's 21 years old, 6 foot tall, 206 pounds. He has a draft grade of an A-. This guy really should not have fallen to us in the second round. He should have been gone much earlier. But you see a lot of offensive and defensive linemen in this draft go off the board pretty early, and a lot of edge rushers as well went this draft. So Luther Burden falls to us, and he pretty much is comped to be, one of his comps was Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Oh boy.
As a player. So if the Bears just got their Amon-Ra St. Brown to play the slot, that is going to be huge in the Ben Johnson offense. All right, let's talk about his college production. First year, 45 receptions, 375 yards, 6 touchdowns. Sophomore season, 86 receptions for 1,212 yards, 9 touchdowns. And then this past year, 61 receptions for 676 yards and 6 touchdowns. So just like Loveland, junior year, a little bit down. But, he is a very fast, quick wide receiver. Stop and go ability is he can stop on a dime and hit top speed again. The Matthew Golden pick to Green Bay. So this was a comp between the two, correct? So Matthew Golden was able to run a 4.2940 at the combine, where Luther Burden ran a 4.41, correct? However, in game speed, Matthew Golden was only ever able to hit 20 miles per hour, where Luther Burden was able to hit 22 miles per hour. So game speed versus track speed, we are talking, there is a big difference there. So Luther Burden is a guy on the field that plays at a different pace when on the field versus trying to run, in the underwear Olympics that are the combine.
Underwear Olympics. So do we expect Luther Burden III to be on the starting lineup? Is Tyler Scott's days numbered? What's going on?
Tyler Scott's days are absolutely 100% numbered. Tyler Scott's his days were numbered when we took Omalai Zacharias. Okay. Zacharias would have been our number 3 in my opinion. Now that we have Burden, Zacharias, in my opinion, will be wide receiver 4 with kick and punt return duties.
Yeah.
So Tyler Scott, I'm sorry, as Ben Johnson said in his press conferences, this is it. This is the time for people to show up and produce in practice, or you will not make this team.
Love it.
We drafted players that are going to literally push people to their limits, and we have very versatile players. The next guy we're going to talk about. Hold on.
I got something for you. For the next pick. Here we go.
Hey, Wisconsin! Is that all you got? Come on, you can be louder than that. I know y'all mad because championship gold looks good on the blue and orange. We are in the shadow of Lambeau Field. And I love Lambeau Field because the king of the North, the best quarterback in the NFC North, Caleb Williams, is undefeated at Lambeau Field. I am a visionary. I am a revolutionary. I am Seth freaking Rollins. And I am here to tell you that with the 56th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the greatest franchise in the NFL, the Chicago Bears, select Ozzie Trapillo, tackle from Boston College. Let's burn it down and bear down Chicago.
That is how you do it.
Yeah, listen, I when Seth Rollins was going, because I was watching the draft, while he was doing it, I was hyped, and then it started getting a little long in the tooth, and I was like, all right, come on, Seth, let's wrap it up. Let's announce
he
the
was
pick.
supposed to do some 2 picks earlier. I think he was supposed to do something in the second round, but the pick got traded. And then he ended up having to wait another hour to do number 56. So at that point, Commissioner Goodell said, just don't worry about the time. Do what you got to do. So he's like, all right, I'm going to do it. So, he was also on Waddle Sylvie this afternoon. So,
like I said, he got a little long there, and it was like, all right,
it was jabbed at the Green Bay Packers, so it's all good.
Hey, listen, Clay Matthews took a jab at us, so
he started it.
I'm more than happy with what Seth Rollins did. That said, like I said, it took a little time for him to get to the pick, but I do appreciate the Packers being put in their place. All right, Ozzie Trapillo, 23 years old, 6'8", 316 pounds, out of Boston College, was ranked the most pro-ready tackle in the draft. That should tell you more than enough about Ozzie Trapillo. Most grades that I have found on Trapillo have him ranked as a C+ pick for the Bears. Now, they are picking him or giving him a grade of C+ because obviously there were other positions that, these pundits feel were more necessary. And Trapillo was a bit of a reach. They feel that way. I do not. All right. We talked about this last week. The Bears went through 34 different starting combinations on the offensive line. Ozzy Trapillo has played 4 of the 5 starting line positions in college. He has played left tackle, left guard, and right tackle in college. So you're telling me that we just got a guy at the pick that we got him at, and he can play all 4 positions and upgrade the offensive line depth behind Thuney, Jonah Jackson, Darnell Wright, and Braxton Jones. Not only that, the Bears have come out in the press conferences this week and said if there's an injury, they feel that Darnell Wright can switch to left tackle potentially, and Trapillo would then fill in at right tackle. So there you go. You have now solidified the depth of the offensive line that we were desperate for last year when we were constantly suffering injuries with Murray and Kramer and Braxton Jones and I don't know why I'm blanking on his name, but he's no longer with the Bears, the right guard from last year. Jenkins. Thank you. So like I said, we constantly had injuries last year. I mean, Nate Davis was, nowhere to be found. So to me, this pick is much better than a C+, because we desperately needed that depth on the offensive line. We re-signed Jonah Jackson to a contract. Dahlman is on an extended contract. However, Thuney is still only on a 1-year deal. Yep. We have not extended him yet. So, being 6'8", you don't necessarily want to guard being 6'8". However, he has filled in at every position in college and played every position in college. So if he needs to play left guard at some point, even though he's 6'8", he can do so. And that is the biggest thing for me, is getting guys who are versatile, can play all positions, especially when your team, like that was a major issue for you last year.
You know what? I think that this draft was a smart draft. And while it wasn't flashy, you address some things. You're going to stretch the field with Colston Loveland. Luther Brown, like you said, fell on your lap, kind of like Roma Dunze. Oh, Burden, sorry. Kind of fell on your lap, just like Roma Dunze did last year at that pick. Now, it does look like splashy moves where you're getting, like we did last year where we got a punter in the 4th round when you could have addressed the offensive or defensive line, but you know what? It looks good right now. It looks really good.
Yeah, I will say this. I will say this. There were 2 times that the Bears could have drafted an edge player, which I really feel we still need depth at edge because, yes, we have Deo. However, he hasn't really proved anything yet. He's been okay as a player in the NFL so far, but he is not elite.
Yeah, and Sweat was hurt last year.
And we had the opportunity to draft Azaraku. We traded back because, we missed on Henderson and we missed on some other running backs. However, Azaraku was there. We could have taken him with pick 41. Now, I'm not going to complain because with trading pick 41, we were able to get Trapillo and more picks for this year.
Yep.
However, again, when you have the opportunity to get a guy like Azaraku as an edge, I probably would have done it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know where the Bears have these players ranked on their big boards. I don't know why Poles thought it was cute to trade back a few times. Because again, we also talk about the Bears had the opportunity to grab Jack Sawyer with their 109 pick, and then they ended up trading with, I believe it was Buffalo, and they ended up not drafting Jack Sawyer. So that was like your last edge guy that I knew of, name wise, that intrigued me. And then, like I said, it was why we didn't draft Jack Sawyer there and decided to move back. I don't know, but we did it. And
you there, JC? Looks like you froze. Looks like JC. There you go. He's back. Are you back? He's still cutting off. Yeah. So after Trapillo, they took a defensive tackle, Shamar Turner from Texas A&M at pick 62. JC, you were in and out, so I don't know if you're. Yep, looks like he's still out. Pick 62 was against Shamar Turner from Texas, a defensive tackle. And in the fourth round, they selected Maryland linebacker Ruben Hippolyte, the second at pick 132. They also traded into the fifth round to select Kansas defensive lineman Austin. No, that's last year. That was last year. Austin Booker was last year. Come on. Again, those were the later picks. It's not like those guys are going to be showing up on the roster coming up next year. They did have some invites as well. So again, in my opinion, I think that they did address a lot of the needs for the offense. I wish they addressed a little bit more on the defense, like JC said, an edge to rush the passer. You got to get home to the quarterback and take them out. You're not going to be able to outscore every single game. I know this isn't the NBA where you can just half-ass it and not play defense this entire time. You're going to have to play defense and be able to get to the quarterback, so that way you can let your offense get out there. So the more times you can take their offense off the field for your offense to score, the better. So all right, looks like JC is back. He fell off. So
yeah, I don't know what's going on with my internet.
Yeah, it's all right. I know we had like 3 other picks. I named them. I don't think there's anything special. I know they drafted a running back at the end.
Actually, I do like the running back. I don't know that he'll really be much of anything in the NFL. Exactly what I said. But you look at some of his game tape, constantly moving his feet, constantly churning the legs, bouncing off of guys. We'll see what it turns out in the NFL. Right. But I really did like that pick for a 7th round pick. Could be something. We'll see. There was a guard, I believe we took in the 6th or 7th round out of Michigan State. Sounds like he should be a rather staunch guard. Again, we'll see what he turns out to be. Maybe we end up getting rid of some of these other guys that we have as depth pieces, because we did hold on to Murray. We still have Kramer. We still have some of those guys on our roster.
Still have Ian Wheeler, the running back that was, if you saw the Hard Knocks, was doing well before he got hurt.
Yes.
I don't see Roshan Johnson getting much of any touches next year. And then there's rumors of Nick Chubb possibly taking a meeting with the Chicago Bears to join the running back room.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Nick Chubb, coming off of a nasty and massive knee injury last year, did not look like his former self last year. But with as bad of a knee injury as he was dealing with, I mean, it's hard to imagine that he would have looked much better than he did last year. I mean, that is one of those knee injuries that could have been career ending because it was multiple ligaments everything, meniscus. It was basically a complete restructure of the knee.
He tore his ACL,
and-
MCL, and required 2 surgeries to fix the knee.
Yeah. So like I said, I love Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is one of my favorite, fantasy players. Like I said, we'll see what he can do.
2 years
if we
removed.
add him, he is going to be a great short yardage hammer and goal line back. I think Swift will get the majority of the carries, but in those short yardage, tough yardage area, that Nick Chubb will be the guy. Because Swift, for whatever reason, when it comes to that kind of stuff, he chooses the wrong gaps, he chooses the wrong holes. He does some weird stuff sometimes where instead of running towards open field, he'll run at a defender. And it's kind of one of those, where's your vision at? Why did you do that? So I think that's why the Bears were very interested in snagging some of these running backs this year. That said, Nick Chubb, or the other option that I've thrown out there is J.K. Dobbins. One of those two I personally feel would be a great addition if we can get them for the right cost. Because again, both these guys have had multiple knee injuries, things of that nature, but they would be a fantastic addition to our running back room. And the last prospect I'm going to talk about is Shamar Turner, defensive tackle out of, I believe it's Texas A&M, got a draft grade of a B. He is 22 years old, 6'4", 300 pounds. And once again, just like Ozzie Trapillo, he has played all 4 defensive line positions. So once again, if injuries are an issue, this is a guy that can go up and down the defensive line and has the ability to play multiple positions and fill positions of need should there be an injury. So again, while this draft, you have sexy pick of Colson Loveland, sexy pick of Luther Burden. The rest of our picks are not very sexy, but they have a purpose of securing and filling the depth that we much needed last year due to injury. And I think that is something that stuck in Poles' head, is that due to injuries last year, what should have been a good year for us was really tarnished because, again, when you go through 34 different starting combinations on an offensive line and there's no continuity and guys are in the lineup, out of the lineup due to injuries, it makes it tough sledding, especially for a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, I think the offense has a lot to work with right now, and they're going to have a lot of new pieces moving into the offense, especially with Ben Johnson taking the helm. So hopefully these guys can all show up for the voluntary mini camps and then the rookie mini camps and then the OTAs and then into training camp, that they can all start building chemistry for all these new pieces that are going to be introduced into the offense. Now on defense, again, we have a lot of people that are returning. We haven't added a lot, but if the defensive coordinator Allen can do what Eberflus did, because he was a very good defensive coordinator. The defense was really good until he got fired, and then it fell off. It fell off really hard. So if the defense can respond to Allen and his scheme and his play calling, we should have a pretty decent season.
Jason. I think Grady Jarrett and all the moves that we did in the offseason, I mean, getting Grady Jarrett next to Javon Dexter, then obviously, Deo to me is still a question mark, but you got Montez Sweat on the other side. To me, that is, and you still have Billings and a few other, defensive linemen. Your linebackers are somewhat still in place. We did lose Jack Sanborn. Right now they have Noah Sewell kind of filling in that spot. However, the linebacker that we took, Hippolyte, that guy has blazing speed. He does have a good track record of tackling, but kind of got lower grades. It was a bit of a reach. A lot of people thought Hippolyte should have gone a little later than, what we did. However, I also have kind of seen some things saying, based on Hippolyte's size and speed, that maybe he would positionally be switched kind of as a strong safety, backing up Brisker to me, which would not be a bad idea. But we'll see what happens there.
Definitely we'll see what happens there. Yeah. So right now, I know it was a long episode, and thank you for everybody who's still watching and been sticking with us. I wanted to address the passing of Steve McMichael, Hall of Famer. Obviously, it's huge, especially in Chicago, because he was part of the '85 Bears. He was a personality that showed up at Wrigley Field. He was a personality that was on the radio, on TV, on Channel 5, and just throwing, the show on Sunday off the rails. I remember seeing that as a kid. Steve McMichael, nicknamed Mongo or Mean the Merciless, obviously played professional football. He got diagnosed with ALS 4 years ago. He played 15 seasons for the league, primarily for the Bears. He played 1 season for the Packers, 1 season for the Patriots. He leaves behind his wife, Misty McMichael. Definitely a personality that was undeniable anytime he was on TV or on the radio, whether it was on ESPN or 670 The Score, was very entertaining. And he had an easy transition going into the world of professional wrestling, ended up in WCW, and, just he went in there fitting like a glove just because he was such a talker and such a big, larger-than-life personality that was the perfect fit after football for him. He did get to see his induction into the Hall of Fame, and he was a fighter, and he's always been a fighter. So just wanted to play a little something I got up here for Steve McMichael from one of his close friends.
Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor today to stand here and pay tribute to a true legend. A man who epitomized everything it means to be a Chicago Bear, and a champion in every sense of the word. Steve Mongo McMichael, a name that resonates with power, tenacity, and sure determination. In the world of professional wrestling, we often talk about toughness, grit, and resilience. But let me tell you something, folks. Steve McMichael possessed all those qualities long before he stepped into the ring. The key member of the legendary Chicago Bears '85 defense, Mongo brought the same intensity to the football field. And let's not forget his transition to the world of professional wrestling, where he continued to captivate audiences with his larger-than-life persona and unmatched charisma. Whether he was crushing quarterbacks or body slamming opponents, Steve McMichael left an indelible mark on the sports world. To Steve McMichael, I say thank you for the memories, the victories, and the undeniable passion you brought to everything you did in life. You're not just a Chicago Bear great, you're a true champion in every possible sense of the word. And as I've always said, to be the man, you gotta beat the man. And you, Steve McMichael, are undeniably the man. Woo!
Oh, I thought that was a nice, touching tribute to Steve McMichael by his close friend Ric Flair. I mean, he said it the best. There's really not much we can say after that. But JC, if you have any words for McMichael?
I will say this, as growing up in that era, the anytime Mongo did a broadcast, an interview, anything, he was authentically himself.
Yes.
And he very much had a extensive swear word or cursing, live on air. That it was, again, authentically himself. He didn't try and be someone corporate wise that he wasn't, and he was unabashedly himself. And to me, I think that's why Chicago gravitated towards him, loved him, because he said things how he felt. He said things how he meant them. He didn't shy away from anything. He said it how it was. And that was Mongo.
Well said, JC. Definitely, he will be missed. And sorry, I don't want to end on a bad note, but I wanted to ask, did you watch wrestling last week?
I unfortunately did not. I had a million other things that as soon as I got off air, I got involved doing. But I will try tonight to watch this week's episode. I unfortunately do not have Netflix. So, I can't watch things live on air. Usually I have to catch them reruns, etc. So I will try this week to see if I can. I should be able to watch last week's episode.
You should watch last week's episode.
Because you said last week, after WrestleMania should be a good one.
Right.
Again, we talked last week, and the one thing, like I said, that stuck out to me the most, and I don't know, because again, I haven't really watched the new WWE, but we talked about the skits and the vignettes and like all those things that helped move storylines and vendettas and everything of that nature in the wrestling business during that Attitude Era. Like I said, whether it was filling Vince McMahon's car with concrete, whether it was dropping a metal beam on a limo, or it was rolling out a Zamboni down to the ring, or a beer truck and just dousing the authoritarians in the WWE with a fire hose of beer. Then you had Kurt Angle that constantly did his mockeries and spoofs of things where he came down in a milk truck and sprayed people with milk. Even buried alive matches where closing the coffin that was buried in a mound of dirt. Latino heat coming out in lowriders all the time. Those things are what I remember from my childhood. Those are the things that again, it made me invest in those characters, because like I said, it wasn't necessarily the wrestling. The wrestling was great, but it was the storytelling in the Attitude Era where, like I said, it was someone would be hanging upside down from an ankle loop that Stone Cold had set up, or like,
I do remember that. He was setting traps backstage. Yes. That was amazing.
The whole episode, they're searching for Austin for the rest of the episode, kicking in doors, kicking in, opening up porta potties and like, all these things. And, at the end of the night, they all meet in the middle of the ring. And then Austin, you hear the glass break. Austin comes out. He makes it about halfway down the ramp. And then a huge like net falls from the ceiling. And all the DX guys are trapped in like a net, in the middle of the ring. And then Austin jumps in the ring and starts beating them while they're under the net. So it's little things like that. But then you also had the WCW, ECW, WWE wars, where, Austin had disappeared for a while, and ECW and WCW, the NWO, was kind of taking over and causing havoc in the WWE. And then all of a sudden, you hear the crash. There's fights in the back, off stage. There's fights going on in the middle of the ring, and you just watch Austin pull up in a pickup truck and basically walk through the entire building, just kicking everyone's rear end all the way down to the ring. And then at the end of the night, it's, Austin, Rock, whoever, at the time, Undertaker, whatever, those main guys standing in the middle of the ring, all raising each other's arms because, all right, we just dispensed WCW and ECW.
Yeah.
So like I said,
you were like at the end of the Attitude Era and begin of the Ruthless Aggression Era, that when Austin left and like all the major players left, and then you had the introduction of John Cena and Batista and Randy Orton and Brock Lesnar, and Latino Heat became a thing, from being a radical now to being a comical iteration of himself. You had Benoit as, like whatever you might think of Benoit personally, you might agree on that, but as a wrestler and an entertainer, he was very good. You had still had Jericho there. You had a lot of players that were still doing really good storylines. That's happening now. You had Paul Heyman betray both CM Punk and the Tribal Chief, and now he's aligned with Seth Rollins, and Seth Rollins has aligned himself by getting some muscle in Braun Breaker. And he's if you don't know who Braun Breaker is, JC, he's the son of one of the Steiner brothers, Big Papa Pump.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Big Papa.
I know Big Papa Pump.
Yeah. So you have that storyline. Now you have the John Cena coming out of WrestleMania after winning his 17th championship. And now Cody wasn't on last week's Raw, I don't think, or whatever. I got to watch this week's Raw. See if he's going to come back or he's going to take some time off, whatever. But you got Randy Orton, his old rival, being introduced. That is a great segment between them two because they're so good on the mic. They've known each other for over 25 years. They've traveled up and down the road. They trained together. They, literally came up in the same era. So that's a great segment to watch.
Is that the guy with the TNA belt? I don't know his name, but
you're talking about Joe Hendry.
Yeah,
Joe Hendry did make an appearance at WrestleMania.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, it's fine. He became famous. Whatever. It doesn't.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I told you, like I see little clips, on YouTube, on Facebook, and like I said, the one that got me interested again, like was it last year or 2 years ago? It might have been during the pandemic, which was Orange Cassidy. Because
his little shtick.
Yeah, his little shtick got me for a little while. Because I mean, like I said, he plays a sloth, like he doesn't wrestle, and then all of a sudden he has the skills to be like a lucha libre, which he did play one of those type of characters in the indie scene, I guess. Because I looked into him, because it's one of those, he does have a pretty good move and skill set. Even though he, like I said, he plays this like sloth type wrestler, when he does, because as the match goes on, he'll start pushing the pace. And to me, like, I think he's actually a pretty good wrestler when he pushes the pace. But I think his little shtick, eventually will get him, where people get sick of it.
Yeah.
That said, I don't really follow the other promotion. I don't know much about Kenny Omega. I don't know much about any of those guys, but I do know that promotion, I mean, some of the moves and the finishers they're doing, like they're pretty high flying, like, tombstone, like pile driver stuff, but it's in a flip. And I'm like, dude, someone's gonna break their neck, like
Yeah.
often, and
TNA had a pay-per-view yesterday, and some dude jumped off like a really high, like I don't know what kind of apparatus that they had the ring, and then it was like a lot higher. I don't know if it was on top of a pole or something, because I seen there was wire holding all the poles together, and he got to the top and then did some like 450 splash onto the apron, to like the mat area where there was like 5 or 6 guys, and let me tell you, he only hit like one or two of those guys before hitting the floor, not 5 or 6. So they didn't break that fall very well. And so, like, it doesn't. While wrestling, I understand why they want the high spot, but let me tell you right now, what sticks in your mind, what sticks in your memories, what has that emotional connection is going to be the story, the why. Why do I care? Because you know what, Stone Cold's a badass, and now they can't find him anywhere in the arena, and he set up traps because he knows you're looking for him, and then at the end of the night, he traps everybody and kicks their ass. That's funny. There's a why there. DX is looking for him. DX wants to kick his ass. He gets ahead of the game, and it's comical. It's you have to give the why, and you have to do long-term storytelling for someone to be invested. Everyone's like, it's the TikTok era, but at the same time,
the perfect one for me, long-term storytelling, Kane and Undertaker.
Yeah.
Your brother's still alive, and like I said, it's that type of stuff. Like I said, and again, I don't watch religiously on a weekly basis anymore. Like I said, I catch clips here and there.
Yep.
And to me, it's one of those, maybe there are vignettes, maybe there are skits that I don't see because I don't watch on a daily basis. But to me, like, I feel like there's more focus on let's fit in 10 matches a night rather than let's fit in 8 and do the vignettes and skits to push a story or to push a, whatever. Like I said, I know at one point, there was the Miz interview in the middle of the ring. Then you had Jericho's like, you made the list type of stuff. But to me, like I said, it was the my camera said 2.5 hours is too much. But I'll keep talking without my camera rolling.
So just finish your thought.
It's those skits and vignettes and stuff like that really, to me, is what caused 10 to 15-year-old Jason to tune in every week. And it's like, okay, what crazy antics are DX going to be up to this week? Walking down a hallway, like, hey, who are you? And then you kick them in the face, and papers go flying. Or, they're in a kitchenette and, basically like Shawn Michaels wants to kick a little girl in the face because the little girl was talking trash to DX, just different things like that. And like I said, nowadays, like, I feel like there's nothing there to make me interested in Sheamus, to make me interested in LA Knight, to make me interested, like why should I be invested in this person? Like, what's their storyline? What's their back?
The last 4 years, Roman had total control of the wrestling industry with his storyline. It was captivating every week. There was something in, and they even brought some comedy in with Sami Zayn when he was part of it. There was some comedy there. Again, everyone came out ahead with that storyline. Sami Zayn, did a bunch of great matches with upper echelon people. You had the twins. One of them is a champion, right? Main event. You have main event Jay, right? Jay Uso. He's a champion now. Now his brother is also on a singles route, coming out better. You had Solo Sikoa, who was like just the enforcer and with no mouthpiece. Now he's doing a lot more better with the mouthpiece. You had Jacob Fatu, another family member. He now holds another strap. I think he's the U.S. champion I think he's the U.S. champion.
Which is great for the bloodline. But okay, what about?
You have to have villains
Yeah.
for these baby faces to fight against. So the more villains you create, the more storylines you have for these baby faces to come up and have a struggle to try to get ahead, whether they're getting run in on and getting beat up during a match that they're trying to advance to a tournament or whatever, or you have now a three-way interaction of hate. Everybody hates each other. That was the CM Punk, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns, where all three of them do not like each other. So now you have a story that can go three different ways, and it can split off as a branch and continue that way. So there is a lot more long-term storytelling that's been happening in WWE in the last 4 years. And then again, you're coming in at the tail end as the end of two big stories. One, Bloodline ending, and second, the completing the story for Cody Rhodes. That is completely over now.
But like I said, that's great for the 6 people in the Bloodline, but it fails to have me interested in like those lower talent people. You know what I mean? It's one of those like, all right, we have a great storyline for, the Bloodline, but then it's like, all right, where does, Sheamus fit in? Where does The Miz fit in? Where does, I mean? Like, and it's like, when you think about the Attitude Era, it's like you had Rock, Mankind, Undertaker, Kane, like they all got their storyline, but then you had like the Hardy Boys, the Dudleys, and them, like they're getting that whole Lita's cheating on Matt with Edge, and
That actually happened.
well, yeah, but again, it's the lower level talent had storylines of why were the Hardys against Christian and Edge and Lita, where it's one of those situations where, I mean, like great, the Bloodline's getting a storyline. Okay, DX got a storyline, right? But you still got the Christian Hardy Boys storyline. You still got APA storylines. You still had the Nation of Domination storyline. You still had.
I'm telling you, watch the product. It's not. I'm not saying it's to that caliber, but it's saying there is a tag team division now, and there is storylines between.
Like I said, and as I've stated, because I don't watch every week, maybe there are storylines for those lower guys that I'm missing, because I mean, like a lot of the Facebook clips, they focus on those higher level Randy Ortons, the what's going on with the Bloodline and CM Punk right now, where I'm not getting the LA Knight Miz storylines, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I said, I'll turn it on tonight. I'll see if I can watch last week's episode.
You'll love the John Cena Randy Orton, and I want you to watch Randy Orton's reactions to John Cena's comments, and that'll tell you a lot right there, because John Cena is on fire as a heel, and I'm really enjoying it right now. Some people are not, and even some people are saying that he's not being a heel, that he's just being truthful, and he's finally able to express his frustration after 25 years of being, like dressing up like Barney and being super happy for everybody, and now he's just like, I'm tired of it. I'm in it for me. So loving that storyline. Definitely something to watch. Give you something to watch. All right, JC, we're almost at 3 hours. Let's cut it short right here. Let's cut this long episode. I mean, it was action packed. It was great. We had
guests,
Stocks guy. Yeah, we thanks to Jack, Ankony, and Miguel Esparza for joining us. I'll put their socials in the description, so you can follow them. You can follow Jack on SI, and I post all of his. I try to post most of his articles on our Facebook page, and I do share a lot of Miguel's stuff on my Instagram. So, all right, guys, it is it for today. I gotta go flip the audio version, and I'll be up till 1 a.m. That is it for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you to our listeners for sticking with us and supporting us through 245 episodes. Thank you to our sponsor, 606 Media, True Chicago Sports Fans. And check us out on social media, JC Dynasty FF on X for him. For me, Big Z _606 Media on all my socials. Go ahead and add me. I'll put all my clips on my Twitter. You'll see the clips on YouTube. You'll see the clips everywhere. I post them everywhere. So go ahead and share those clips when they come out. You can find us at TCSF Pod on Twitter. Serge runs that one. Facebook, IG, Spotify. Like I said, it is True Chicago Sports Fans. You want to reach out to us about a topic or a food or a show, or you want to argue about something we said during one of our shows, hit me up at truechicagosportsfans@gmail.com. All right, y'all. For JC, I am Big Z, and we'll see you next week for episode 246. And until then, be good to each other for the love of sports.
Swish.
What you do in life speaks eternal, baby. And I am so glad to be a Chicago Bear and part of you guys' history. It's an honor and a privilege.
You know, anybody that ascends to that level of play, Hall of Fame level, it's a God's gift.
Steve McMichael, 76, was there first to polish him off.
We're the Giant. Everybody wants to be Jack.
Steve McMichael comes up with the football.
Lordy, Lordy, Lordy. Do you believe this?
I think the only thing that can jinx us is Bourbon Street.
Eason dragged down by Steve McMichael. Fumble. The Bears have it at Hungry Chicago. Finally champions on this January day in New Orleans.